Chapter 219. Lu Shiyun was full of vigor. She was originally smiling sweetly, but after hearing such words, her smile immediately froze. The black yak was still talking to himself. Sister-in-law is really charming, much more youthful and beautiful than those demonesses. My brother is so lucky. What kind of words was this? It was somewhat inappropriate to compare a beautiful girl to a demoness. Lu Shiyun was extremely sweet. Even with her puffed cheeks and wide eyes, there was no lethality to her appearance. The handsome white tiger was just beside her. As her brother, his expression immediately darkened after hearing such words. He glared at the big guy with slicked back hair and black sunglasses. The black yak was somewhat astonished. He shot a glance at White Tiger and said, "Who are you? Why are you standing so close to my sister? Stand further away." He had a completely different attitude towards Lu Shiyun. He acted as if he was very familiar with her and advised, "Sister-in-law, stay away from this guy. He doesn't look like a good person." Who didn't look like a good person? Not to mention the White Tiger siblings, even those from the Hollow Jade Temple, were speechless. No matter how they looked at him, he looked like a big ruffian. How could he have the nerve to say such words? White Tiger glared at him angrily. He was so angry that he wanted to beat him up. He knew of the black yak, but had never seen him in human form. Thus, he didn't know who this big guy was. Chu Feng hurriedly came between them and separated the two. Otherwise, the two would definitely start fighting. "Black boss, don't talk nonsense." Chu Feng introduced them. "So you two are brother and sister. But why are you standing beside your sister? Isn't that where my brother should stand? Don't tell me you have a sister crush." The black yak kept up with the times. He used his communicator every day to read the news and ask for advice. White Tiger wanted to beat him up, but he knew he couldn't. At this moment, Lu Shiyun's beautiful and spirited eyes were almost emitting sparks. But in the end, she restrained herself and smiled sweetly, saying, "So your brother Yak. I've heard so much about you. Many of my female friends especially like you." The black yak felt very comfortable after hearing this. He laughed out loud and said, "You have good taste. This king is very gratified. What do they say?" White Tiger was speechless and turned away. Lu Shiyun's white clothes were clean and tidy. There was a kind of fresh and refined beauty to her. Her neat and smooth hair draped over her snow-white neck. She smiled brilliantly and said, "They said that it's very difficult for that old bull to fall in love with the young and beautiful white snake fairy. This is an infatuation that transcends species. I hope that the two of you can have a good ending. Lovers will eventually be together." The black yak was so angry that he wanted to glare. How was he old? He was in the prime of his life. That white snake had 1,000 years of cultivation. Moreover, when did he become infatuated with her? Every time he heard this, he felt like going crazy. "Brother Ox, smoke is coming out of your nose." Lu Shiyun reminded him with a smile. The black yak was angry. He thought of Zhou Etian. It was this bastard who had fabricated all this nonsense and turned him into a well-known bitter love-struck person. The black yak. He of, and of, and the, and he was he of, he. The black yak howled and ran out in the blink of an eye. He wanted to settle the score with that damn director. Zhou Etian, unfortunately, would become the punching bag. "Don't be reckless," Chu Feng shouted as he chased after Zhou Etian. He was afraid that the black yak's pent-up resentment would explode and cripple Zhou Etian. "Don't worry, I won't kill him." The black yak disappeared with a swish. By the time Chu Feng returned, he was just in time to see Lu Shiyun teasing Yellow Ox, who was in the form of a beautiful little boy. She pinched his little face and said, "Call me Big Sister." Yellow Cattle stared at Lu Shiyun with his big eyes. Although he was young, he had always acted like an elder. Now that he was being teased, he couldn't find a way out. "Don't think I don't know who you are. Back at Mount Taihang, you were the one who attacked me from behind, weren't you?" Lu Shiyun didn't let go of his cheeks. She was grinding her teeth. That time, Yellow Cattle ambushed her from behind and knocked her down with a single hoof, leading to the tragedy that followed. Now, whenever she saw skewers, she would be traumatized. Lu Shiyun was all smiles as she stared at him. "You're actually a little girl, aren't you? It would be a pity if such a beautiful little boy were born." Yellow Cattle wanted to punch her. He stretched out his little hands and pushed her white and delicate hands away. He glared at her and said, "Throwing you onto Chu Feng's bed." What? White Tiger became anxious after hearing this. He simply didn't know about this situation. He had never heard his sister talk about it. What kind of terrifying thing had happened back then? As a brother, he treasured his little sister very much. He was afraid that she would be hurt. His sword-like eyebrows immediately stood up, and his eyes were wide open. He saw Chu Feng return and immediately pounced towards him. "Demon King Chu, what did you do to my little sister?" "Nothing." Chu Feng felt that he had been wronged. Although he had inexplicably laid on the little white tiger's soft body, he didn't know at first. "Brother," Lu Shiyin called out. Just a moment ago, she was all smiles after angering the black yak and teasing yellow cattle. But now, she was embarrassed and angry. She felt that the most unfortunate thing was that trip to Tying Mountains. "You're still saying nothing? Let me tell you, this matter isn't over yet." White Tiger was really angry. He grabbed onto Chu Feng's shoulders. He didn't care whether he was a king-level entity or not. His desire to protect his little sister was incomparably strong. He wanted to settle the score with him. "That's easy. You could be his brother-in-law." Yellow Ox crossed his arms, raised his head, and said calmly, "Bang!" Lu Shiyin directly knocked on his head. "Hey, what's going on?" The old man Lu Tong came over and looked left and right. "Brother, stop messing around." Lu Shiyin hurriedly ran over, feeling very embarrassed. At this time, Wang Jing's expression was strange. She had also arrived because she had heard that Chu Feng was going to leave again. She had come to see him off just in time to see him off. She had heard almost everything she needed to hear. "Child, don't be afraid. I'm here. I promise he'll take responsibility. Otherwise, I'll break his legs and never let him enter the house." At this critical moment, Wang Jing came over and said in a rather domineering manner. She also grabbed Lu Shiyin's hand and looked her up and down. Chu Feng turned his back to them. He felt a headache coming on. His mother had actually come and heard everything. What was going on? "Auntie, you've misunderstood. There's no such thing." Lu Shiyin's beautiful face was flushed red. Although she was usually very quick-witted, her hands and feet were tied at this moment. She had never experienced this kind of situation before. "What a good child," Wang Jing sighed. In her eyes, this girl was too understanding. She didn't make a fuss even when she was wronged. She even considered Chu Feng's position. Chu Ziyuan also came and watched from the side. Although he didn't say anything, he also felt very satisfied when he looked at Lu Shiyin. The more Wang Jing looked at her, the more she liked her. Not only was she impeccably beautiful, but she also had such a good temperament. She was simply the ideal daughter-in-law in her heart. She directly took off the dragon bone bracelet on her wrist and put it on Lu Shiyin's wrist. "Child, keep it well. It can beautify and nourish your skin." Huh. Soon, she noticed that there was a sparkling dragon horn bracelet on Lu Shiyin's wrist. It looked so familiar. Wasn't this one of the bracelets that Chu Feng brought back? Wang Jing immediately revealed a smile and said to Chu Feng, "At least you still have a conscience. Don't let her down." During this process, Chu Feng couldn't get a word in edgewise. He could only stand there and watch helplessly. How deep was this misunderstanding? As for White Tiger, his eyes were spitting fire. He glared at Chu Feng, then looked at the two bracelets on his sister's wrist. He had completely lost his temper. He wanted to explode, but he couldn't. Last time, he had seen this kid acting sneakily with his sister. He even gave her the dragon horn bracelet. Now that he thought he understood the secret, he looked up at the sky and sighed. "Sigh? Why are you sighing? This is a happy occasion." Lu Tong slapped him. "Auntie, you really have misunderstood." Lu Shiyin tried her best to explain. However, Wang Jing was extremely passionate. "It's okay, child. Auntie understands. From now on, you are my daughter. If that brat dares to bully you, tell me." Lu Shiyin rubbed her temples. She didn't know what to do. In the end, she suddenly smiled and said, "Auntie, since you've said that, can you beat him up now?" She looked at Chu Feng. Wang Jing didn't say anything else. She went over to warn Chu Feng. She really wanted to teach him a lesson. She lowered her voice and said, "What about the woman in black you met on the blind date last time? She was also very elegant. How are you going to deal with it?" Chu Feng felt wronged. He couldn't explain it. Wang Jing pinched Chu Feng and helped Lu Shiyun vent her anger. She whispered, "You're not like me or your father at all. How did you become a playboy? If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have urged you to go on blind dates. I'm warning you, don't hurt any of them. They're all good girls. You have to settle them perfectly." Lu Tong also came over to lecture Chu Feng. He told him that although it was good to be young, he had to restrain himself and not hurt others. Yellow Cattle was secretly laughing at the side. White Tiger, on the other hand, was grinding his teeth with an unreconciled expression. From his point of view, Demon King Chu was a womanizer even though he wasn't bad in many aspects. He had personally seen this fellow go on a blind date and take away the black-clad queen. "Mom, don't worry. Brother-in-law, don't grind your teeth at me. I admit it all." In the end, Chu Feng said. That was because he saw Lu Shiyun giggling in the distance. She was clearly waiting for the storm to pass before explaining to her brother. But now, Chu Feng was in deep trouble. Thus, he cleared his throat and admitted it all. "That's a good thing." Lu Tong slapped his thighs and laughed heartily. The banquet was not only to send off Chu Feng's party, but also to celebrate. In the end, the little white tiger ran away in a daze. Chu Feng was scolded, but he consciously kept quiet and accepted it with humility. Only when the black yak returned was he rescued from the predicament. Zhou Etienne had arrived. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen. It was obvious he had been beaten up. However, he was also quite evil. He had his arm around the black yak's shoulder, and they were talking and laughing. It seemed like they had a good relationship. Everyone was astonished. Little Zhou said he's going to film an epic-making drama for me. The name will be The Peerless Bull Demon. The black yak laughed heartily. This thick-skinned fellow had beaten someone up and even forced Zhou Etienne to act in a drama to clear his name. There was no one else like him. "Let's go." Finally, they set off. In the end, the White Tiger siblings still accompanied him to Mount Longhu. Apart from them, Yi Qingru, the clairaudient, Xiong Kun, Hu Sheng, and the others were also departing. However, they took another plane. On the evening of the second day, they arrived at Jiangning. Chapter 220. Outside of Jiangning, there were numerous desolate mountains. It was completely different from before the upheaval. The city was bustling with skyscrapers and towering mountains that pierced through the clouds. Chu Feng's party arrived and found a place to rest. After settling down, Chu Feng began to contact Linoy. At the same time, the black yak once again urged the Siberian tiger to head east. When the time came, they would attack Mount Longhu together. At the same time, in Shuntian, two groups of people were already on their way. Yi Qingru, Chen Luoyan, the clairvoyant Du Huaijin, and the clairaudient Ouyang Qing were the first group. They were very relaxed. As for the other group, Hu Sheng, Xiong Kun, and the others didn't even dare to breathe loudly in the plane. Not far from them was a woman dressed in black, like a queen. These beast race experts were truly apprehensive to travel together with the undead phoenix. She was a peerless expert, and even the strongest of their race was far from being her match. Although the journey was long, Chu Feng wasn't the least bit tired. He was a king-level expert, and his physique had evolved to an unimaginable level. The night sky was dotted with stars. He had already contacted Linoy, and she was coming over immediately. Jiangning City was still not quiet at night. Neon lights flickered, and many shops were still open on both sides of the street. There were even some bars that were brightly lit. It was very lively. Not long after, a sleek blue car drove over and steadily stopped by the roadside. The car door opened, and Linoy walked out. She was wearing a simple and pure blue dress that accentuated her tall and slender figure. Most of the time, her temperament was cold and elegant, like an icy beauty. Tonight, however, there was a simple and pure beauty about her. Linoy approached and carefully sized up Chu Feng. The night wind blew her beautiful hair, and a brilliant smile appeared on her flawless face. "You've already become a king-level expert?" Chu Feng was surprised. What had happened during this period of time? Linoy had actually reached this step much faster than he had expected. Linoy nodded. There was a layer of sparkling and translucent luster on her body, like a faint halo. Even her hair was like this, and her temperament was somewhat ethereal. Unfortunately, she was still the same as before, like a flowering tree in the snow and ice. Even though she had a smile on her face, she was still a bit aloof. "I was worried when I heard that you had an accident in the West," she said. She did not express any excessive emotions, but Chu Feng knew that she must have cared a lot at that time. However, she was a woman with such a personality, and it was difficult for her to warm up. Unless he was really her boyfriend and overbearingly went to reform her. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but laugh. Linoy looked at him. Her beautiful and deep eyes seemed to be able to see through his thoughts. "Are you going to say that I'm cold again? It's good that you know. Sometimes, I often wonder what kind of person can conquer an iceberg like you and make you passionate and unrestrained," Chu Feng said with a smile. He felt that if Linoy was passionate, she would definitely be a different person. Now that things had come to this, he had already let go of his first love. They cared about each other, but it was difficult for them to truly get close. Sometimes, Chu Feng wondered what kind of man Linoy liked. "Let's go. I'll take you to dinner first," Linoy said. "You really know me. You know that I'm a foodie. Let me say this first. I don't have king-level delicacies here." Linoy drove very steadily. She was very familiar with this city because she had grown up here. Chu Feng sat in the passenger seat and tilted his head to look at her. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. She was still beautiful, but her temperament had become more and more ethereal, even giving off a feeling that she was far away from the mortal world. Lin Naoi looked ahead in a natural and poised manner, allowing Chu Feng to observe her. Her skin was fair and tender, with a layer of faint brilliance. Even her hair was the same, smooth and soft, slightly crystalline. She was very quiet. The curve of her snow-white neck was obvious, beautifully outlined by her dress. Her legs were slender, but because she was in the driver's seat, they were hidden. "Hey, where are you looking?" Finally, Linoy reminded him, but she was still very calm. "Naoi, why do I feel that there's a layer of fog around you? There's an unusual secret about you." Chu Feng didn't feel awkward at all and naturally changed the topic. "It's always been like this," Linoy said. Chu Feng nodded. "Yes, there's always been a secret. Unfortunately, you're not willing to share it. It's not that I don't want to say it, but some things are hard to say." Linoy didn't turn her head. She focused on the road ahead, skillfully and nimbly driving. Finally, Linoy chose a private restaurant. It was quiet and didn't lack good food. It was also very suitable for chatting. Inside the private room, under the light, Linoy was very calm. She looked at Chu Feng and met his gaze. Chu Feng naturally wouldn't give up. He was quite calm and admired her beauty. In terms of appearance, Linoy was comparable to Jiang Luoshan. They were both goddess-level beauties. "Why are you always so thick-skinned?" A smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. He had always been like this in school, a bit of a hoodlum. "What about you? Can't you be shy for once?" Chu Feng smiled. It was rare to see Linoy blush. She was always so calm, and even calm. Linoy's bright red lips were obviously gorgeous, but she still felt cold. She smiled and said, "Perhaps I've been infected by you. My skin has become thicker, and it's hard for me to be shy." The two chatted softly. Linoy asked him about his experiences in the West. It was obvious that she was worried about him during that period of time, but she wouldn't reveal too much of her own emotions. After chatting for a long time, the dishes were served. Chu Feng didn't stand on ceremony and picked up his chopsticks. Linoy just watched him eat. "You really don't want to eat it all?" Chu Feng asked her. "All right, I'll eat with you." Linoy had already eaten, but she still picked up her chopsticks in the end. Then, she mentioned that the piece of jade was not in celestial biology. It was actually borrowed by the Preaching Research Institute, saying that it was for research. That old guy. Chu Feng told Linoy the details of his deal with Chi Hong Lin and took out the piece of jade for her to take a closer look. "Yes, it's similar to the one in celestial biology. There's also a shadow of a flood dragon inside." Linoy nodded. "This is troublesome. When will celestial biology get the jade back?" Chu Feng asked. "They won't dare to not return it. They just need some time." The two could guess some things. The Preaching Research Institute had high hopes for Chu Feng. They felt that he might be able to comprehend the secrets of the jade and would come knocking on his door. Their goal in borrowing the jade from celestial biology was obvious. Waiting for me to come knocking. So they're not afraid? Chu Feng pondered. At this time, Linoy was quite serious. Her calm and perfect face was somewhat solemn. She nodded at Chu Feng and said, "Some corporations aren't as simple as they seem." Chu Feng revealed a puzzled expression because he had sensed that Linoy was warning him to be careful. There have been many mysterious changes in the post-civilization era. Perhaps they can also be called mutants. After careful calculation, this should be the 5th time, she said while looking at Chu Feng. The previous ones were too small and could even be ignored. Linoy said solemnly, "The changes we're experiencing now might not have never happened before. It's just that ordinary people can't find traces of them." At this moment, Chu Feng was lost in thought. He was thinking of many things. Suddenly, Linoy's communicator rang. She stood up and went to the window to answer. "Naomi, where are you?" A gentle female voice was transmitted over. "With a friend," she replied. "Then don't come back for now. That divine emissary Yaman is still there. I've already told him that you've left for a long journey." "Okay, I understand." Linoy ended the call. She walked over, knowing that Chu Feng had heard everything. She said, "It's my aunt, divine emissary Yaman." Chu Feng put down his chopsticks. He was no stranger to this person. He had seen him at the Misty Canyon in Xinjiang when they returned from the Western Punitive Expedition. Yaman looked polite on the surface, but deep down, he was arrogant. Chu Feng didn't expect him to come to Jiangning City. Linoy looked at Chu Feng and said, "I can't lend you the jades right now, but I'll have my people rush them. They'll get it back in 10 days to half a month." Then she smiled and said, "You guys are going to mount Longhu. You won't mind if I go with you, right? Did that divine emissary make things difficult for you?" Chu Feng's eyes shone brightly. "No, I just don't want to talk to him." Linoy shook her head and looked at him. "He's a human. Don't think about updating your gourmet rankings." Chu Feng was astonished, but then he smiled. At night, he returned with Linoy, much to the astonishment of the black yak and yellow cattle who were waiting for him. "So this is my real sister-in-law." The black yak's mouth was quite annoying. He wasn't afraid of causing trouble for Chu Feng. Linoy was very calm as she looked at the black yak. She was so calm that even the black yak felt embarrassed. His eyes flickered under her gaze. "Hey, little girl, can you not be so calm? Greetings, Ox King. Please take care of Chu Feng in the future." Linoy's words surprised Chu Feng. "No need to be so polite. We're brothers. Besides, it's not like you're leaving him. Why are you saying such things?" The black yak said carelessly. Yellow cattle looked at Linoy suspiciously. Golden light flowed in his eyes, but in the end, he shook his head. He secretly communicated to Chu Feng via telepathy that there was a layer of strange and mysterious energy on this beautiful lady's body. Linoy also glanced at Yellow Cattle. She smiled and nodded. "The jade has been borrowed. Tomorrow, we'll go to Mount Longhu and see what's going on there." Chu Feng briefly informed the 2 oxen. Then, he arranged a room for Linoy next to his. "Chu Feng, I feel that this lady is proficient in a legendary breathing technique. But it's not very likely. That technique doesn't belong to this world," Yellow Cattle whispered. Chu Feng was surprised, but he believed that Linoy didn't have any bad intentions toward him. Early in the morning, White Tiger was surprised to see Linoy during breakfast at the hotel. He immediately glared at Chu Feng. Even now, he still didn't believe his sister's explanation. He still felt that there was something going on between the two. Linoy. Apparently, Lu Shiyun had also noticed Linoy and came to greet her. Chapter 221. Lu Shiyun's smile was very sweet and full of youthful vigor. Although Linoy was also smiling, her smile was like a snow lotus on top of an icy mountain, cold and unapproachable. These were 2 completely different temperaments, but they got along very well. They chatted while eating breakfast. Their youthful and stunning beauty attracted the attention of all the men in the dining hall. Even the women looked at them enviously. "You're too much of a playboy." White Tiger sat across from Chu Feng and said in a low voice, "I say, brother-in-law, Don't accuse me wrongly. Chu Feng was not afraid of him. Ever since he was misunderstood by White Tiger, he had thrown caution to the wind and addressed him like this every time he saw him. White Tiger's eyes were spitting fire when he heard this. Without a doubt, White Tiger wanted to beat him up every time. However, he was no match for Chu Feng in terms of strength. If he really rushed up to him, he would most likely be beaten up first. What a beautiful bracelet! Linoy was surprised to see the crystal bracelet on Lu Shiyun's wrist. She glanced at Chu Feng naturally. She had already recognized that this bracelet was made from polished dragon horns because she also had one on her wrist. It was given to her by Chu Feng last night. Lu Shiyun was immensely proud like a proud swan. She raised her snow-white chin and said with a smile, "I blackmailed this." Wang Jing had also given her one, but she did not dare to accept it in the end. She asked Lu Tong to return it. Otherwise, her relationship with Chu Feng would be confirmed. She felt that she was still young and full of vitality. In her own words, it was terrifying to think that she would be bound to someone else's daughter-in-law at such a young age. Linoy chuckled. In an instant, the snow-capped mountain thawed, making Lu Shiyun feel that she was exceptionally beautiful and charming. "Naoi, you're good at everything, but you're too cold. But I'm guessing that a lot of men just love to conquer icebergs. They want to change their passion into passion, but in the end, they'll all get frostbitten. There's nothing they can do about it, haha." Lu Shiyun teased. "Stop messing around. I heard that you were traumatized by all kinds of skewers. Is that true?" Linoy teased with a smile. This was really flirting. Lu Shiyun's eyes widened in anger. She glanced at the food counter in the distance. There seemed to be some barbecued food there. "You're not kind." Mount Longhu, a typical Danxiao landscape, was the birthplace of Taoism. After digging up the soil layer, one could see a dark red color. The mountain was composed of red conglomerate, which was why there were many legends about it. According to legend, the red soil was dyed by the secret blood of ancient almighty beings, and it caused this spirit mountain to become even stranger and more mystical. As the ancestral court of Taoism, it was an extremely important secret land among the famous mountains in the world. All the major powers wanted to conquer it, but no one had succeeded. Chu Feng and the others had arrived. They first flew to a large city in this area, and then took a car all the way to a town at the foot of the mountain. Although it was called the foot of the mountain, it was only a few dozen kilometers away from Mount Longhu. Because of the appearance of the folded space, the entire vast land had been turned upside down. "Young lads, are you also mutants? You don't look like it. I advise you not to take the risk. Who knows how many people have come here, but in the end, they all died or were injured. All of them left in disappointment." An old man advised Chu Feng, telling him that the current Mount Longhu was too dangerous. It was impossible to get close. Anyone who went up would die. Moreover, he cautiously warned in a low voice that demons and ghosts would die even more miserably if they tried to climb the mountain. There were many corpses at the foot of the mountain. Chu Feng knew that those corpses belonged to the Beast Kings. More than half of the people in the town had fled, not daring to stay. That was because all kinds of monsters had come to seek shelter. It was simply a gathering place for all sorts of monsters. Only a few people stayed behind, mainly the elderly. That was because they firmly believed that Mount Longhu was a holy land that would protect them and kill demons. In fact, they also knew about evolution, but they believed in the myths and legends even more. They firmly believed that the ancestral court of Taoism could suppress all mutants and monsters. Chu Feng and the others did not act rashly. They were waiting for reinforcements to arrive. Among them were two peerless experts, the Siberian Tiger and the Phoenix King. Neither of them had appeared yet. They were prepared to observe the terrain and understand the real situation of Mount Longhu. The group rested for the night in the town and recovered their spirits. The next day, the group set out towards the red sun and approached Mount Longhu. They didn't necessarily have to attack, but they could at least try to understand what was here. Bathed in the morning glow, Mount Longhu appeared incomparably divine from afar. The entire mountain was suffused with a faint golden hue, as though a supreme sacred mountain had appeared in the legends. Moreover, As they approached, everyone, be it the two oxen, Chu Feng, Linoi, Lu Shiyun, or the others, felt a special pulse. Mount Longhu, which was glowing with a faint golden hue, seemed to be breathing. It was breathing in and out the sunlight, drawing in the energy of the red sun. It made itself even more divine and filled with a mysterious power. "What a great place!" Yellow Cattle exclaimed. Just by looking at it from afar, he could tell that this place was extraordinary. His beautiful little face was full of amazement. That was because the more he looked, the more astonished he became. There seemed to be some kind of breathing technique imprint here. Otherwise, why would the mountains be breathing in and out the morning glow? Mount Longhu, with its steep cliffs and ancient trees, was a scene of simple yet majestic grandeur. Needless to say, the mountain couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as before. It was countless times larger, majestic as it reached the firmament. As they advanced, Chu Feng, Linoi, the White Tiger, and Lu Shiyun all felt comfortable and warm. However, the Black Yak's expression changed. Yellow Cattle was also on guard. Suppress the beast race. In the end, Yellow Cattle gnashed his teeth and uttered these words. He had never considered himself to be a beast race. According to him, he was the orthodox one. But now, as he uttered these words, his fair and beautiful little face became ugly. He seemed to have sensed something. "What's going on? I feel my heart palpitating. I don't feel comfortable here," said the Black Yak. He felt a chill run down his spine. This place was left behind by an ancient powerhouse to deal with the other races. Yellow Cattle sneered. He was extremely dissatisfied because he felt that this was discrimination. This was especially true for someone as arrogant as him. He was still young, yet he had survived the forbidden path and was the first to arrive in this world. He had his own pride. One famed mountain, one path. Mount Longhu makes people love and hate it at the same time. Yellow Cattle muttered to himself. Chu Feng revealed an astonished expression. He recalled the history of this place and the many historical facts. The ancestral court of Taoism had always been overseen by heavenly masters who wouldn't leave easily. According to the legends, these heavenly masters were all experts in subduing demons and devils. Did this mean that the ancient legends weren't necessarily false? There were remnants of energy targeting the beast race here. Strands of purple chi flew over from the red sun and entered Mount Longhu. This made the mountain even more majestic. It blossomed with radiance, as if it was connected to the mythical world. Purple chi from the east? Chu Feng had only seen such a scene in the pilgrimage grounds in Mount Kunlun. The mountain would automatically receive the purple chi. This was an astonishing energy that was extremely beneficial to the human body's evolution. Ayo! A dragon's roar came from afar. It was filled with anger and unwillingness. The sound was like thunder shaking the entire mountain range. This caused the expressions of everyone present to change. The Black Yak was shocked. He knew he didn't have this kind of ability. Although he hadn't come into contact with it, he could feel an astonishing aura that far surpassed his own. A ruthless person has long since arrived here. Could it be that a peerless expert is attacking? Chu Feng was bewildered. The direction of the sound came from the back of the mountain and not here. It was as if a terrifying expert had been injured and was venting his anger. The suppression of the main mountain is too severe. The fierce person at the back of the mountain should be a beast king. Yellow Cattle made his judgment. They circled around Mount Longhu and quickly passed through the forest. Then, they chose an ordinary peak with an excellent terrain and gazed at the back of Mount Longhu. Over there, clouds were rising and the scene was extraordinary. Dragon roars rang out incessantly. It was extremely terrifying. Rumble. The mountain was trembling and so was the valley. A terrifying expert was making his move. It was as if he was trapped and wanted to break the mountain. Roar. Later on, a large black snake flew up and crossed the mountain ridge. The scene shocked White Tiger and Lu Shiyun. This was the first time they had seen a peerless expert flying through the air. A large black snake with a horn. The Black Yak's eyes were wide open. There was a single horn on the black snake's head. Its body was covered in blood, and some parts of its body were almost broken. It was unknown what kind of attack it had suffered at Mount Longhu. It had crossed over 1,000 meters before its body came into contact with an ordinary mountain peak. Then, it borrowed the momentum to fly up and escape into the distance. An expert with 6 severed shackles, Linoy said with a frown. Lu Shiyun's delicate face was also full of astonishment. Her small mouth was wide open in shock. It was as if a large snake was flying through the sky. Occasionally, the black snake's body would scrape against the precipitous cliffs, shatter the rocks, and cause the cliffs to collapse. It had even shaved off a mountain peak. This black snake was extremely terrifying. Can this be considered a flood dragon? Chu Feng asked Yellow Cattle. Yellow Cattle replied, "It has a single horn and is no longer a snake. However, it can't be considered a true flood dragon. You can call it a flood serpent." The black dragon crown prince of the southern sea. Linoy suddenly exclaimed. What? Naoi, you know its origin? Chu Feng was astonished. However, he felt that it was normal when he thought about how well-informed a corporation like Celestial Biology was. Not long ago, Linoy had told him that several corporations had planned to join forces to search for the Fusang Divine Tree. However, they had shelved the plan. That was because the marine life forms were too terrifying. Some were excessively powerful. Most importantly, they were numerous in number, and experts were as common as trees in a forest. Although they didn't actually go out to sea, Celestial Biology had obtained some information. Among them, there was a rumor that the Black Dragon Crown Prince of the Southern Sea had once declared that he would go ashore to seize the Buddhist ancestral grounds of the Great Thunderclap Monastery, or perhaps attack the ancestral court of Taoism. The group drew in a breath of cold air after hearing Linoy's words. The marine race had really come to fight for the famed mountains and rivers on land. They realized that they were in big trouble. The upcoming battle would be incomparably intense. After a long while, the Black Yak sighed and said, "The Black Dragon Crown Prince of the Southern Sea, an expert with 6 severed shackles, was almost cut in two just now. He died in the back mountains of Mount Longhu. It's obvious that he's been trapped here for at least a night. He could be considered lucky to have escaped just now," Yellow Cattle concluded. This was only the back mountains and not the main path to Mount Longhu. This caused the group to frown and feel a wave of headache. No wonder Mount Longhu had never been conquered. It was indeed a terrifying place. Naoi, you're here too? How fateful. A young man with transcendental qualities, his entire body glowed with a sparkling luster. His feet were 3 inches off the ground as he flew over the rocks and grass. He seemed to be traversing the void like an immortal. Chapter 222. He landed nimbly on the ground, exuding an ethereal temperament. He was exceptionally outstanding and wore a warm smile on his face as he looked at Linoy. His long silver hair hung loosely over his shoulders, emitting a silvery radiance that accentuated his fair complexion. He had dark blue eyes, a tall nose, and very three-dimensional facial features. Although he was a Westerner, he was extremely handsome. Yaman. It was actually him, the divine emissary. Be it Chu Feng, Yellow Cattle, or the Black Yak, all of them recognized him immediately. They had met outside the Misty Valley on their way back from the Western Punitive Expedition. Linoy remained calm and didn't reply. "Brother Chu, we meet again." Yaman smiled as he turned to Chu Feng. Chu Feng wasn't too happy to see him because this wasn't the first time they had met. He knew that this man wasn't as sunny as he seemed on the surface. He was arrogant, conceited, and hypocritical, but he hid it well. However, Chu Feng still nodded and greeted him. "It's been a while since we last met. The Ox King is even more elegant than before." Yaman glanced at the Black Yak and then waved at the Yellow Cattle. The Black Yak didn't pay him any attention. He loathed Yaman because he knew how hypocritical he was. When they first met, this man was indeed elegant and graceful, but the contempt and arrogance in the depths of his eyes had unintentionally leaked out. Everyone's reactions were calm, but Yaman remained gentle. He walked over to Linoy and told her about his experiences in Jiangning. He also expressed his gratitude for celestial biology's hospitality. Linoy was calm. She wasn't as direct as the Black Yak, nor was she as perfunctory as Chu Feng. She spoke to him with indifference and politeness. White Tiger was puzzled. He didn't know Yaman, but judging from his appearance, he was definitely not an ordinary person. There was actually a divine radiance emanating from his body. However, his thoughts moved quickly. Even though this man was as gentle as a gentleman, he could tell from the two oxen and Chu Feng's reactions that he was a bit complicated. Yaman was very calm. He greeted White Tiger and Lu Shiyun with a smile and a nod. He was very considerate. Chu Feng walked forward. He knew that Linoy had come to Mount Longhu because she didn't want to meet this so-called oracle. She had hidden herself. "Brother Yaman, this way please. Let's have a chat," Chu Feng said, helping Linoy out of the predicament. He didn't want to see her being pestered, even if this person was very polite and always had a warm smile on his face. Because the more he acted this way, the more she felt that he was a hypocrite. Linoy's gaze softened as she glanced at Chu Feng. However, she quickly retracted her gaze. She actually didn't want Chu Feng to take the lead. She would deal with it herself. That was because she was fully aware that this divine emissary was not simple, and the people behind him had great backgrounds. "Very well, Brother Chu. It's been a while since we last met. I was just about to have a chat with you." Yaman laughed heartily and directly walked over. Yellow Ox frowned. This person was still carrying that snow-white lamp with him. However, the wick of the lamp was now flickering with a black flame. This made even Yellow Ox apprehensive. This was a terrifying weapon, and it was also the reason why Yaman dared to roam the east. He believed that he wasn't afraid of any challenge. Although Chu Feng disliked him, he didn't want to fall out with him immediately. He calmly asked about the man's harvest from his trip to the east. "Not bad. Some of the Eastern peerless experts are very understanding and respectful of the oracle. They have decided to forgive Schiller and not pursue the matter further," Yaman said. "Oh, which expert?" Chu Feng didn't believe him. This person looked like sunshine, but he wasn't honest at all. "Which bastard dares to offend the world and let Schiller go?" The Black Yak glared at him and then sneered. "I think you're just making things up, aren't you?" He was very direct and didn't hold back at all. "The Ox King is indeed tyrannical. His words are too crude," Yaman said calmly. A divine light flashed through his eyes. That was his sharpness, but he didn't reveal it. "We're here to see Mount Longhu. Do we still want to see it?" Lu Shiyun asked. Linoy walked over to her and circled Mount Longhu with her. She wanted to understand the situation here. White Tiger hurriedly followed, afraid that his sister would run amok. Yaman chuckled as he shot a glance at Chu Feng and the two oxen. His eyes were filled with confidence and vigor, but he didn't want to waste any more words with them. He followed Lin Naoi unhurriedly into the distance. "I don't like this so-called oracle. What's with the pretense? Isn't he just a lackey of some outer realm genius? What oracle? Screw his grandpa," the Black Yak mumbled. Of course, this was a telepathic transmission. The range of the transmission was very small, so only Chu Feng and Yellow Ox could hear it. He said with an ominous glint in his eyes, "Can we kill him?" Not just him. Even Chu Feng felt that it was best to finish off this person as soon as possible. This Yaman was working for Schiller. He was, after all, an enemy and not a friend. Yellow Ox sighed. He won't be easy to deal with. That silver lamp on his body is an extraordinary magical weapon. It contains the essence of extreme flames. Once activated, the sky will be filled with black flames. Even an expert with 6 severed shackles will be burned to death. Chu Feng rubbed the diamond chakram with his hand. Unless he killed Yaman in one blow, the consequences would be dire. A magical weapon of this level can protect one's body. "Unless we destroy that silver lamp first, we won't be able to kill this person," Yellow Ox informed. If Chu Feng wanted to attack, he would have to destroy the silver lamp directly. Otherwise, the extreme flames would burn the mountains and evaporate the lakes. The Black Yak's eyes lit up after hearing this. This silver lamp was too powerful. If he could seize it, it would be a handy weapon. Yaman halted his steps and stood in front. He waited for Chu Feng and the two oxen to approach. His smile was no longer as gentle and radiant as before. That was because Linoy had already walked far away. He knew that the three behind him didn't have a good impression of him. They had been like this since the last time they met. At the same time, the man and the two oxen lacked reverence. Yaman was somewhat cold. He considered himself a divine emissary. Even this so-called demon King Chu and the two oxen dared to disrespect him. This infuriated him. In truth, he really wanted to use the silver lamp to kill the three, but for some reason, he felt a certain threat from them. He didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. Why aren't you smiling? You were so radiant just now. Why are you looking at us like that? The Black Yak asked. I was waiting for the three of you to have a chat, Yaman said indifferently. Yaman calmly said, restraining his previous gentleness. He felt that there was no need to hide anything from the three of them. What do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about Mount Longhu? Or do you want to talk to us about the Oracle? Chu Feng said indifferently and was very perfunctory. Mount Longhu has long since been reserved by the divine decree. You guys can forget about your wishful thinking. This place is unreachable. Yaman sneered arrogantly. This made the Black Yak want to give him a good kick. He found this lackey of the divine emissary more and more displeasing to the eye. He actually dared to look down on the three of them. Yaman then turned to Chu Feng and said, I heard you and Miss Lin Naoi graduated from the same university. Is that true? You investigated me? Chu Feng stared at him with a cold glint in his eyes. Yaman replied calmly, You're not worthy of my investigation. I only noticed some things about Miss Lin's past when I was paying attention to her. He was no longer hiding his arrogance. Yaman continued arrogantly. At the same time, I'm warning you, you have no right to walk together with Miss Lin. You'd better stay away from her, or else your fate won't be good. At this time, even Yellow Cattle want to cut him up. Was this person so fearless just because he had a magical weapon? The Black Yak wanted to take action immediately. He couldn't stand such hypocrites. He had been acting sanctimonious before, but now he had finally revealed his true colors. You're warning me? Chu Feng stopped the Black Yak and looked at Yaman. What right do you have? Just because you're running errands for that so-called god, you think you're a cut above others? His voice wasn't loud, but in Yaman's ears, it was like a blunt knife stabbing at him, making him feel uncomfortable. To think that he would be called a servant of God. A raging flame burned at his chest. He was a divine emissary, yet he was being looked down upon. His eyes turned cold as he held the silver lamp in his hand. A layer of black light spread out and covered his body. Chu Feng was mocking him because he wanted to take action. The time had come. He could feel the undead phoenix's aura. Unfortunately, Yaman suddenly retreated a certain distance. He didn't want to take action. Yaman was very cautious. He couldn't see through Chu Feng and the two oxen. He felt that there was a certain power within their bodies that could threaten him. This was one of his extraordinary points. His divine instincts were very sharp. Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't disturb Miss Lin Naoi's peace. She's fated with God and our bloodline. She's not someone an ordinary person like you can look up to, Yaman said. Afterward, he smiled brightly and said, We don't need to confront each other. We're not enemies. Who knows, we might even work together in the future. He turned to leave, but when he reached a secluded area, he took out his communicator and contacted someone. Senior, come to Mount Longhu at once. Chu Feng is here. Without a peerless expert around, we can easily kill him. What a divine emissary. He's just a henchman. How dare he treat us with such disrespect? I really want to kill him right now. The Black Yak's eyes were burning with anger. Don't worry, the undead phoenix is already here. When the Siberian tiger arrives, we'll take action immediately and finish him off. That way, we can seize the silver lamp unscathed, Chu Feng said. That bastard hates us quite a bit. He was about to attack just now, but he backed off in the end, Yellow Cattle said. Could it be that he's waiting for Schiller? Chu Feng was shaken. This divine emissary had come all the way here for Schiller. Both of them served the same god. After such a long time, Schiller's injuries should have healed by now. Chu Feng sent a telepathic message not far away. Phoenix King, don't show yourself for the time being. We're waiting to ambush Schiller. I hope the Manchurian tiger arrives soon. That way, we can ambush Schiller together. The Black Yak rubbed his palms together. Chapter 223. Chu Feng took out his communicator and contacted Xiong Kuan, Hu Sheng, and the others immediately. He warned them not to say anything and to keep the Phoenix King's arrival a secret. Xiong Kuan, Hu Sheng, and the others were a bit slower and had yet to approach Mount Longhu. Now that the Phoenix King was no longer with them, they felt much more relaxed and began to chat happily. After receiving the message, everyone was shocked. They hastily came up with a plan so as to not give themselves away. I hope the Manchurian tiger arrives as soon as possible. It'll be perfect if he can ambush Schiller here. Chu Feng said. The Black Yak once again asked the Siberian tiger where he was. He wanted nothing more than for the Siberian tiger to arrive immediately so that they could kill Schiller. Soon, Old Black, wait for me. We'll take down Mount Longhu together and become a sage ancestor. I'll be there in a jiffy, the Manchurian tiger shouted from the other side. The Manchurian tiger shouted from the other side. He was looking forward to it. He had now completely joined the eastern camp and got to know the elder ape of the Great Woods Temple, the golden-winged rock king of Mount Hua, and the others. He had also become brothers with a group of great demons from Mount Kunlun. His life was very comfortable. Chu Feng and the two oxen were discussing how to take action when the time came. They had to kill Schiller in one strike because he would be a great threat to them if they didn't get rid of him. Yaman's silver lamp is extremely terrifying. It might become a big problem at the critical moment. Should we work with the immortal phoenix to kill him first? Yellow Cow asked. He was very familiar with magical weapons. That lamp contained the essence flames of extreme, and was extremely extraordinary. If it were to unleash its full power, it would probably cause the entire mountain to erupt with magma and destroy everything. I also want to get rid of him as soon as possible. The Black Yak's eyes revealed a fierce glint. Chu Feng frowned and said, if we kill him now, we'll most likely alert the enemy. What if Schiller finds something amiss when he tries to contact him and turns around to hunt us down in the future? That would be even more terrifying. They decided to keep an eye on Yaman at all times. Once they found any clues and knew that Schiller was about to arrive, they would immediately take action. The immortal Phoenix King walked over in a black dress. She was 175 centimeters tall and outstanding. Her body was covered in flames, and her phoenix eyes were cold. She wanted nothing more than to kill Schiller on the spot. She met up with Chu Feng and the others, agreed with their idea, and then disappeared again. After a brief discussion, they began to move out. They paid attention to Yaman's movements and familiarized themselves with the surrounding terrain in preparation for the upcoming battle. Chu Feng stepped on the cliffs and vines, like a bird king spreading its wings. From time to time, he would soar hundreds of meters in the air. The main peak of Mount Longhu glowed with a faint golden luster. It was sacred and terrifying, and no one could ascend it at the moment. Naturally, he would not take the risk and only observe the surrounding area. Old Black, I'm coming. I'll be there in another 50 kilometers. The Manchurian tiger's speed was truly fast. Brother Tiger, you have to hide yourself. Don't expose yourself. We're going to do something big in a while. The Black Yak warned. What big deal? Manchurian tiger asked. Prepare to ambush a fat sheep. His breathing technique is worth attacking. Yellow Cattle took the communicator and told him so. He was afraid that the Manchurian tiger would run away after learning the truth and not dare to participate. That was because this tiger had no moral integrity. They had to lure him over first. The Manchurian tiger was fairly excited after hearing this. He opened his eyes wide and shouted in a low voice, I love ambushing fat sheep. This is my specialty. Wait for me. Don't act before I arrive. He was very excited and told the others to wait for his arrival. Yellow Cattle was calm and said, Don't worry. How can you be left out of such a good thing? Good brothers will share weal and woe together. Don't forget each other when you're rich and powerful. We'll move together in a while. Little Yellow, you're too kind. The Manchurian tiger was excited and felt his blood boiling. He had coveted the breathing technique for a long time. This thing was simply too precious. Once he grasped it, he would be able to rapidly increase his combat strength. A distance of 50 kilometers was nothing to the Manchurian tiger. He crouched down and transformed into his true form. He stepped through the mountain forest and rushed over in the blink of an eye. At this time, Chu Feng and the others had seen the entire mountainous region. The various terrains of Mount Longhu were reflected in their minds. Little Yellow, Old Black, who are we ambushing? The Manchurian tiger had arrived. He quietly approached and met up with the others. His large eyes flickered with a fiery light. He really wanted to obtain a breathing technique immediately. Chu Feng looked at him. This fellow was greedy for life and had no integrity at all. Would he be scared off, or would he brace himself and join the battle? This was a big problem. Little Chu, what's with your eyes? Why are you looking at me like that? The Manchurian tiger turned back to look at Chu Feng. Tiger King, I'm just worried that you'll be scared and disappear with a swoosh. I just want to look at you a few more times, Chu Feng said with a smile. What do you mean? The Manchurian tiger was furious. He was an expert with 6 severed shackles. How could he be looked down upon like this? We'll ambush Schiller in a while. Yellow Cattle's beautiful and exquisite face was full of calmness as he told the Manchurian tiger directly. The Manchurian tiger's aura immediately weakened and his eyes became erratic. Yellow Cattle looked at him calmly and said, You've already joined Mount Kunlun, but why weren't you a core member? You're still missing the most crucial battle. The Manchurian tiger was furious. Little Yellow, you tricked me. Chu Feng said, Tiger King, you have to know that Schiller hates you and me the most. I flattened his divine city, and you ran away at the last moment. I reckon he hates you even more than he hates me. If we don't get rid of him today, you'll definitely die in his hands in the future. The Black Yak was very sincere. Brother Tiger, if you run away again this time, our brothers from Mount Kunlun and the east will look down on you. I don't think they'll recognize you. Yellow Cattle added another step. At that time, everyone will probably call you Running Tiger, and your reputation will be ruined throughout the east and west. Damn you. The Manchurian tiger glared. He felt that he really shouldn't have come this time. He had been forced into a corner with no way out. He could imagine that his reputation would be ruined if he were to run away again. At that time, neither the east nor the west would accept him. You 3 tricked me. The Manchurian tiger gritted his teeth. He was no longer excited. His eyes were filled with killing intent, and he wanted nothing more than to silence them. He doubted that even if he and the other 3 joined forces, they would still be no match for Schiller. According to his understanding of the situation, Schiller was ridiculously strong and unstoppable. The undead phoenix appeared at the right time. Her body was covered in raging flames. She stared at the Tiger King and said in a cold voice, Little kitty, is that all you've got? Go, I'll deal with him myself. I can kill him all the same. The Manchurian tiger was shocked. The undead phoenix was still alive? But then he became angry. He was, after all, the king of beasts. The blood in his body surged as he shouted, Do you really think I'm a sick cat? I'm not going to run. I'm going to kill Schiller. Finally, they reached an agreement to hunt down Schiller together. The Manchurian tiger and the undead phoenix disappeared and waited for Schiller to appear. At this time, Chu Feng and Yellow Cattle walked forward, paying attention to Yaman's movements. The moment he used his communicator or left, it would be an important signal. At this time, Yaman was courteous and elegant as he followed behind Linoy, White Tiger, and Lu Shiyan. Seeing Chu Feng and the others following him, the corners of his mouth curled up into a mocking smile. He stood in place, waiting for them to catch up. Brother Chu, this is actually quite good. Just follow me from afar. Although the scenery is beautiful, it's not something you can enjoy, Yaman said indifferently. As he spoke, he glanced at Linoy in the distance and then at Chu Feng. He seemed to be very considerate and considerate. Stop pretending. The Black Yak was extremely annoyed with him. He really wanted to slap him with his hoof. Yaman wasn't angry. Instead, he mocked the Black Yak. Ox King, I'm very disappointed in you. With your personality, it'll be difficult for you to live long in this world. Vaguely, I seem to have seen the prophecy of God. Your fate will be full of misfortune in the near future. He sneered in his heart because Schiller was about to arrive. At that time, none of these people would survive. He didn't want to personally take action, but if something unexpected happened, he would definitely deal the finishing blow. Oh, so you really can communicate with God. I wonder if you can see our different fates, Chu Feng said carelessly. Yaman looked at him and shook his head, saying, Brother Chu, I can vaguely see your tragic fate. Sigh, what a pity. You're not an ordinary person, becoming a king at such a young age. It's just that your fate is quite pitiful. Chu Feng sneered. You're prophesying? Yaman replied proudly. This is God's prophecy. You don't understand. I'm a messenger of God, so I can often communicate with him and receive God's revelations. I have a feeling that Brother Chu's path of destiny has dimmed. This is a sign that your life is about to be extinguished. Take care. Not far away, Xiong Kun, Hu Sheng, and the others were dumbfounded. They looked at each other in dismay, but didn't say anything. Yaman looked at them and said, You lot should follow me from now on. The road ahead will be bright and smooth. Xiong Kun, Hu Sheng, and the others had already understood part of the situation from Chu Feng. Although they were cursing in their hearts, they didn't show it on their faces. Do you know what kind of ending you're going to see in your destiny? Chu Feng calmly asked. Radiance will shine brightly, and I will become a god. Yaman was proud. His silver hair fluttered in the wind and blossomed with radiance. At this moment, he was no longer concealing himself. He swept his gaze over the mountainous region and said, Mount Longhu will become a divine land. Our bloodline is destined to rise and flourish here. His communicator vibrated after he finished speaking. He didn't pick up the call and only replied in text, telling Schiller not to hesitate and to act now. That was because Schiller was already 5 kilometers away. At the same time, Chu Feng felt his heart throbbing. His divine instinct was too sharp. He knew that the critical moment had arrived. Yaman took a few steps back and purposely put on a pitiful expression. Brother Chu, take care. You should believe in fate. What do you mean? Xiong Kun mumbled. Yaman's expression was full of disdain. At this moment, it was time to watch a good show. This so-called demon King Chu and the 2 oxen were about to die a miserable death. He knew very well that Schiller hated them to the core. Once he took action, there would be no survivors. Chapter 224. Yaman had a faint smile on his face as he looked down on the group. He had called Schiller over and was about to end their lives. In his eyes, these people were laughable. They would never understand what was going on even in death. At this moment, Chu Feng already had the diamond chakram in hand and was about to attack. The Black Yak was incomparably nervous. He was waiting for Schiller to approach and step into the Manchurian Tiger and Phoenix King's ambush. The most important thing was the result of their first attack. Even Yellow Cattle's little face was taut. Today was a bit risky, but it was worth it. Otherwise, if Schiller were to recover from his injuries, it would be even more terrifying if he were to assassinate them as he pleased. In the distance, the Manchurian Tiger and the Phoenix King were ready for battle. They had already sealed their pores and held their breaths, ready to launch a sure-kill attack at any moment. They knew that Schiller had arrived. As an expert with 6 severed shackles, he was almost psychic. Just now, Schiller had released a wisp of fluctuations that couldn't be hidden from the 2 of them. Schiller was incomparably cold as he gazed at the distant mountain forest. If there were no peerless experts overseeing this place, it would be difficult for those people to escape even if they were to fly away first. This was his confidence. At his level, not many people could stop him. Mutants and beasts of lower realms were as fragile as scarecrows to him. With a swoosh, he strode forward along the mountain forest. It was as if he had shrunk the ground to inches. He was so fast that it left people speechless. He was ready to start a massacre. At this moment, Schiller was very cold. He wasn't as calm and smiling as he was in the Vatican. If he had to say who he hated the most, it would definitely be Chu Feng. Chu Feng had flattened the sacred medicinal garden with missiles and destroyed his myriad spirit blood medicine. His heart was still bleeding to this day. Otherwise, he might be the first to sever his seventh shackle. At that time, who would be able to stop him? With a single step in the lead, he would be able to move forward step by step. He would be able to look down on all the kings and obtain the most astonishing divine fruits. As for the home of myriad gods, he would definitely gain control of it and obtain the opportunity to become a god. He had already arrived, standing on a short mountain, revealing his true body, overlooking Chu Feng and the others. He didn't even bother to conceal himself, already seeing one man and two oxen. Destroying my precious medicine, not a single one of you should even think about living, he said in a low voice. Then he took a step out, crossing the air from the short mountain as if he was flying. He stuck close to the mountain forest, wanted to reach that area and kill Chu Feng and the others. Yaman could see it clearly because he was facing the hill. He smiled brightly and said to Chu Feng's group, "Have a safe journey." He was extremely conceited because he didn't believe that these people would dare to make a move against Schiller. According to his calculations, Chu Feng and the two Oxhead warriors would flee in terror, but they would be mercilessly killed by Schiller. However, what happened at this moment far exceeded his imagination. Myriad changes occurred in an instant. In the distance, as Schiller was traversing the forest, a multicolored tiger leapt into the air. Its claws shone brighter than the sun as it swatted at Schiller from behind. That claw was too terrifying. It was the size of a small mountain, and when it slammed down, the void shook violently. At the same time, the phoenix silently emerged from the forest, shrouded in black flames. It tore through the void and arrived in a flash, attacking Schiller from a different direction. Yaman was astonished. What was going on? Someone dared to attack the powerful Schiller. One had to know that even with the silver lamp, he was afraid of Schiller. Boom! Chu Feng had made his move. Regardless of whether the other side succeeded or not, it was time to deal with Yaman. Otherwise, this so-called divine emissary would bring out the essence flame of extreme Yin. The diamond chakram glowed with a dazzling radiance as it spun and flew out at several times the speed of sound. The scene was rather frightening. It was like a comet streaking across the sky. This weapon was extremely strange. Originally, it weighed only 48 kilograms, but after being infused with energy, its weight would increase to several tens of thousands of kilograms. This was a terrifying transformation. As Chu Feng's strength increased, the mysterious energy he had infused into the chakram increased as well. It seemed to be even heavier than before. The diamond chakram pierced through the sound barrier, causing the air to explode like a cloud of fire. It possessed a fatal destructive power and arrived in an instant. Yaman was stupefied. Everything had been under his control just a moment ago. He had been looking down on the people before him, thinking that they were ignorant and would soon become laughable ghosts. Who would have thought that the situation would change so drastically? His reaction couldn't be said to be slow. He held the silver lamp horizontally in front of him and shot out a black flame to protect himself and burn these people. However, his combat experience was truly lacking. He hadn't made any preparations beforehand and could only respond hastily. The diamond chakram arrived in the blink of an eye. Its speed had already exceeded his reaction speed, and it was on the verge of colliding with his body with a terrifying momentum. No! Yaman cried out in fear. The black flames throbbed. At the critical moment, the silver lamp automatically protected his body and formed a screen of light. Additionally, the lamp moved his hand horizontally until it was right in front of him. Yellow Cattle's worries had come true. This magical weapon was too extraordinary and could automatically protect its wielder. The lamp's wick was brilliant, and flames filled the air as it covered Yaman's body. It was a terrifying scene. The originally throbbing black flames were now like metal and had taken on a tangible quality. Yellow Cattle cursed inwardly. They had encountered great trouble. If the other party blocked this attack and activated the essence flames of extreme Yin, everyone present would be in mortal danger. Boom! Contrary to everyone's expectations, the diamond chakram smashed through the black metal-like screen of light amidst a loud explosion. Moreover, it directly collided with the silver lamp. A dazzling brilliance blossomed between the two, blinding everyone present. Black flames surged on the lamp's wick. A bizarre power surged violently, wanting to incinerate the diamond chakram. The blazing temperature was frighteningly high. Crack! However, at this moment, the silver lamp actually emitted a shattering sound. It was as if porcelain had cracked and was covered in cracks. Then, with a loud bang, it shattered into pieces. Ah! Yaman screamed miserably. The hand he had used to hold the silver lamp had turned into a bloody mist and then evaporated. Not even a bone was left behind. Yellow Cattle was dumbfounded. As he saw it, that magical weapon was extremely powerful and extraordinary. Yet, it had been forcefully smashed apart by the diamond chakram. He felt that he had still underestimated that shiny bracelet. It was even more astonishing than he had imagined. In truth, Chu Feng had long since sensed that the diamond chakram had become even heavier after pouring his energy into it. He knew that its power was much greater than before. Buzz. Space trembled. Although the diamond chakram had been temporarily obstructed and slowed down, it had not stopped spinning. It continued to spin violently, and with a thud, it brushed past Yaman's shoulder, severing his arm and causing it to fall to the ground. Yaman let out a blood-curdling scream as he staggered. His head was drenched in sweat, and his body was stained with blood. The pain was so unbearable that he almost fainted. Divine emissary? What are you without the silver lamp? Chu Feng descended from the sky and kicked down. With a thump, the kick landed squarely on Yaman's chin. Within moments, blood splattered in all directions as he was sent flying. The black yak rushed over with the violet copper blade in his hand. With a puff, he swept across the battlefield and chopped off both of Yaman's legs. Yaman had completely lost the ability to fight. This was the result of the two showing him mercy. They wanted to ask him about that god. Otherwise, Chu Feng's kick would have turned his head into a rotten watermelon. Chu Feng flew through the air and didn't stop. He chased after the diamond chakram and quickly found it. He used his spiritual energy to transport it, and, with a swoosh, it flew into his hand. Yaman's face was pale. After falling to the ground, he almost fainted. He couldn't accept this result. The pitiful worms he had looked down upon had actually counterattacked. Chapter 225. Yaman's body was in great pain. He was utterly disheartened after collapsing to the ground. As a divine emissary, he had always considered himself superior to others. He had always looked down on Chu Feng and the two oxen. But what had he become now? Especially when he saw the look in Chu Feng's eyes, his heart palpitated. It was an undisguised contempt for him. Yaman's heart was in turmoil. He found it hard to accept that the person he had looked down on had actually dealt him such a fierce blow, causing him to fall from the clouds into the mud. Just who was looking down on whom? At the thought of this, his body was in great pain. He felt his entire body go dry. He had become the target of contempt. Boom! An earth-shattering sound was transmitted from not far away. The collision of peerless experts had caused a great commotion. Within the forest, the multicolored tiger leapt up and slapped Schiller with its mountainous claw. A blinding light erupted as if a small nuclear bomb had gone off. The scene in midair was too terrifying. Energy fluctuations covered the sky and the earth as they surged outwards. Schiller had indeed been careless. The tiger's claw smashed into his back, sending him flying and coughing up blood. This was a serious injury that almost caused him to explode. He would have been dead if not for the two energies of light and darkness boiling within his body at the critical moment to protect his organs and spread to his limbs and bones. The Manchurian tiger had been preparing for this attack for a long time. He had been extremely focused and decisive at the last moment. The king of the forest and the lord of beasts were naturally adept at hunting. Even after evolving to become a peerless expert, he still possessed such outstanding talents. Boom! At almost the same time, the phoenix, riding on her black flames, shot across the sky like a black sun and smashed into Schiller's body. The force behind the attack was simply too great. This time, The sound of bones breaking could be heard from within Schiller's body. He had suffered an even more serious injury. At least 3 of his ribs were broken, and he was bleeding from all 7 of his orifices. Additionally, his body was engulfed in flames and was instantly char-black. He had been burned by the flames of the phoenix with 6 severed shackles. Originally, he could have evaded this attack, since the phoenix's sneak attack was inferior to the Manchurian tiger's. However, Schiller had been gravely injured first. The Manchurian tiger's attack had landed on him, causing him to lose his balance and slow his reactions. Hence, he had suffered an even more terrifying second injury. "All of you are courting death," Schiller roared as he rushed out of the black flames. His chest was heaving up and down violently. His body was charred black and stained with blood. He was in an extremely sorry state. In the past, Schiller was calm and collected at the Vatican. He always wore a smile on his face like a benevolent elder. But today he was truly enraged. He had always been the one scheming against others. In order to cultivate the myriad spirit blood medicine in the sacred medicinal garden, he had killed so many kings in a single battle. But today, he had been ambushed. At this moment, his combat power had decreased sharply, but his fighting spirit was even more exuberant. On his back, the light and dark wings appeared. One side was bright, and the other was as black as ink. This was his most powerful trump card. A single body possessed 2 types of Western inheritances, possessing 2 opposing types of energy, making him exceptionally terrifying. Boom! He pounced on the Manchurian tiger and angrily glared at it, shouting, "You shameful traitor, hand over your life." The Manchurian tiger also threw caution to the wind and roared. Its body rapidly shrank until it was only 2 to 3 meters long. That was because a large body could easily be attacked. "Schiller, you were just using me back then. Do you think I'm an idiot? There's a saying that goes, 'Forsake darkness and seek light.' That's exactly what I'm talking about," the Manchurian tiger roared. It had no moral integrity to speak of, so it was naturally not afraid of being exposed. It even spoke eloquently, as if it was reasonable and wanted to fight to the death with Schiller. That was because it had no way out. As long as Schiller didn't die, it would be the end for it. Sooner or later, it would be hunted down by this old fellow. "Schiller, you have the nerve to call others shameful? Is there anyone more sinister and despicable than you?" The undead phoenix snorted. She transformed back into her human form, her black dress fluttering in the wind. The black flame wings on her back allowed her to soar through the air as she pounced forward. The undead phoenix was exceptionally powerful, even more so than the black dragon. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to escape death after suffering such heavy injuries. Boom! She swooped down and shot out a beam of black light from her palm. It transformed into a sharp sword and slashed at Schiller. Schiller's expression was ice cold. He paid no attention to the undead phoenix behind him and went all out. He wanted to focus on killing one person first. The wings of light and darkness flapped rapidly as he charged towards the Tiger King. "Schiller, you shameless bastard. Do you really want to go all out?" The Manchurian tiger roared in a frenzy as it tried to interfere. Boom! Violent waves of energy surged up in the air like a boiling sea of lava. It was a magnificent and terrifying scene. The Manchurian tiger coughed up blood as he was sent flying by the resplendent light from Schiller's hands. Bang! At the same time, Schiller's wings of light and darkness trembled violently and almost broke apart. The undead phoenix's attack was swift and tyrannical, causing Schiller to cough up blood once more. Kill! Schiller was cold and emotionless. He dodged the undead phoenix and shifted horizontally in the air. The wings of light and darkness flapped as he pounced towards the Tiger King once more. It seemed as if he was going to kill it. "Schiller, you bastard!" The Manchurian tiger cursed. He had been targeted and was in grave danger. Although it was 2 against 1, he would most likely be the first to die. Schiller would be next. "Brother Tiger, he's trying to force you to run. You must not cower. This old bastard is playing a psychological game with you. He knows you might turn into a tiger and run away." The black yak shouted from afar. "God damn it! I'm going to die because of you." The Manchurian tiger flew into a rage. He had guessed that Schiller had figured out his temperament and was specifically targeting him. He wanted to break his fighting spirit and scare him away before killing the two experts one by one. Die! At this moment, Schiller's fist suddenly glowed brightly, causing the undead phoenix and the Manchurian tiger's hair to stand on end. This kind of power was exceptionally tyrannical and difficult to resist. Schiller's right fist was snow white and radiant, releasing divine energy. His left fist, on the other hand, was as black as ink. Black light curled around it, bringing with it a sinister yet sinister energy. Boom! He exerted all his strength and punched towards the Manchurian tiger. At this moment, the undead phoenix sighed. Schiller was indeed very powerful. Even she wouldn't be his match in a one-on-one battle. She was somewhat apprehensive. She was worried that the Manchurian tiger wouldn't be able to withstand the attack and would be crippled by Schiller. Rumble! Black flames flared up. She controlled the flames and attacked Schiller with all her might, hoping to block his terrifying attack and help the Manchurian tiger take the blow. The Manchurian tiger's fur stood on end as he roared like a madman. Do you really think I'm a sick cat? This time, the Manchurian tiger spat out a beam of scarlet light, which soared into the sky and transformed into a resplendent monastic robe, blocking the incoming fists. This scene not only startled Schiller, but also the black yak and yellow ox who were standing behind him. Wasn't this the old llama's monastic robe? Back then, this treasure had blocked the invincible elder lion's violent attacks. It possessed extraordinary defensive power. As expected, Schiller's expression changed. The golden lines on the monastic robe glowed as his fists smashed into it, rebounding back with a majestic force. At the same time, the undead phoenix's berserk black flames engulfed Schiller. Swoosh! Schiller roared and soared into the sky. Fortunately, I stole the old llama's monastic robe. Otherwise, I'll probably die here, the Manchurian tiger muttered to himself as he wiped away his cold sweat. These words made Chu Feng speechless. This fellow was indeed not a good person. He had actually stolen the old llama's monastic robe. However, this was also a kind of ability that ordinary people couldn't do. Schiller's eyes were cold as he stared at the two in front of him. The undead Phoenix King was covered in flames. Her body was slender as she launched another attack. The Manchurian tiger had transformed into his human form. He immediately wrapped the monastic robe around his body and soared into the sky, shouting, "The boundless deity! Schiller, you old man, hand over your life." In the distance, Xiong Kun wiped away his sweat and said, "Mr. Tiger, is it all right to chant a Taoist name while wearing a monastic robe?" An intense battle broke out in midair. The two experts attacked at the same time to suppress Schiller. Fortunately, their sneak attack at the beginning was successful and caused Schiller to suffer heavy injuries. Otherwise, even the two of them together might not be Schiller's match. The black yak and yellow cattle's expressions were somewhat unsightly. From Schiller's performance, it seemed that he was even stronger than the elder Lion King. Back then, Schiller probably wouldn't have been injured if the masters of the Eight Visions Temple, the Hollow Jade Temple, and the Roaming Jade Temple hadn't pursued him personally. This person was simply too powerful. The first attack didn't kill him. "Things aren't looking good," the black yak muttered. The sneak attack had failed. Schiller could easily escape if the two were to continue fighting like this, but he would become a great threat in the future. Boom! A devastating disaster struck the mountain forest. It was razed to the ground by the three experts' battle. The destructive power was astonishing. Chu Feng silently moved forward with the diamond chakram in his hand. He was ready to take action. That was because he was worried that the Phoenix and Tiger Kings wouldn't be able to take down Schiller, even if they joined forces. Schiller coughed up large mouthfuls of blood amidst the shattered mountainous terrain. His expression was unsightly. His injuries were too severe after the sneak attack, and he was somewhat powerless, especially since he wanted to find a Manchurian tiger to break through and kill him. In the end, this shameless tiger was especially resistant to beatings after wearing the monastic robe. It was difficult to kill him effectively. "Schiller, "You grandpa, you're always targeting this tiger. It hurts so much." The Manchurian tiger screamed as he fought with all his might. Schiller's expression was gloomy. He could feel that this shameless tiger was purposely provoking him, luring him into attacking continuously in order to make his injuries worsen. "Siberian tiger, we'll meet again in the future. I'll definitely cut off your head," Schiller said hatefully. Swoosh! He decisively turned around and left. He didn't want to waste any more time here. Otherwise, he would really be in danger. But before he left, his eyes revealed an ominous glint as he stared at Chu Feng. His hatred for this young man was even more intense than when he faced the Manchurian tiger. "Ant-like thing die." Schiller swooped down. Upon seeing this, Chu Feng raised his hand and smashed out with the diamond chakram. Schiller's pupils constricted. He had just witnessed the shattering of the silver lamp and was somewhat apprehensive. He knew that this small bracelet contained a great power and couldn't be touched lightly. He evaded immediately and flew over 100 meters away. However, he discovered that Chu Feng hadn't smashed it out and was only putting on a show. "Schiller, where do you think you're going?" The Manchurian tiger roared and chased after him. He was now anxious. If he let Schiller escape, he wouldn't have a good life in the future. After this battle, Schiller would definitely hate him even more. The undead phoenix also chased after him. She opened her red lips and spat out a torrential black flame that enveloped Schiller. Schiller snorted coldly. He had made up his mind to kill Chu Feng. He evaded the two experts in this area and kept on trying to get close to Chu Feng. Just as he was about to attack again, Chu Feng tossed out a dazzling bracelet. It flew at several times the speed of sound and emitted a brilliant radiance. Swoosh! Schiller evaded it and revealed a grim smile. He no longer had any fear as he swooped down. "Retreat. Leave this place." The undead phoenix blocked Schiller and allowed Chu Feng to escape. The Manchurian tiger watched the silver bracelet disappear over the horizon and felt a wave of regret. It would have been great if he had hit Schiller. Schiller clashed with the two experts and suffered a palm strike. He once again charged at Chu Feng with a cold smile on his face and a torrential murderous intent. "Weak insect die for me." He coldly waved his fist and smashed forward. Boom! However, the next moment he was horrified. That was because a resplendent silver light resembling a burning sun had directly smashed into him. This speed had reached 5 or 6 times the speed of sound. At such a close distance, it was very difficult to evade. Schiller was both shocked and furious. Hadn't the diamond chakram flown away just now? How could there be another one? He was full of puzzlement. Back then, Chu Feng had seen a silver mine and a strange tree 800 kilometers away from Shuntian. The strange pollen had caused a metal there to take form and gain life. He had once obtained a piece of silvery white metal and brought it back to the hollow jade temple. Most of it had been sent to the laboratory by Lu Tong, while a small piece had been refined into a bracelet and given to Chu Feng. In truth, Chu Feng's current diamond chakram was refined from the weaponry refinement sacred tree at Mount Kunlun using the snow-white bracelet as a reference. Just now, he had tossed out the bracelet, and now he was smashing out the diamond chakram. Schiller wanted to evade, but it was too late. His right arm was struck and immediately exploded. Blood sprayed out in all directions as his entire arm fell off. One had to admit that an expert with 6 severed shackles was extremely terrifying. That arm actually didn't turn into a mist of blood and was only torn off, causing fresh blood to gush out wildly. Schiller's vision turned dark as he staggered back from the intense pain. One had to know that he was already gravely injured. Boom! The undead Phoenix King arrived and struck him, sending him flying away. Ayo! Chapter 226. The Manchurian tiger's fist was extraordinarily powerful, enough to collapse a small mountain. It landed on Schiller's body with a loud boom, causing his ribs to crack and shatter. Schiller's mouth was full of bloody froth. Even his eyes and ears were overflowing with blood. His entire body was sent flying like a scarecrow, suffering unimaginable injuries. At this moment, he almost fainted. His vision was turning dark, and he could clearly feel his stamina weakening. Roar! The Manchurian tiger roared and leapt forward, breaking through the sound barrier. Accompanied by a violent gale, the surrounding millstone-sized boulders were sent flying, and some trees were uprooted. The clouds followed the dragon, and the wind followed the tiger. The Manchurian tiger's right hand transformed into a sharp claw and clawed at Schiller's body with lightning speed. Schiller's body blossomed with divine light as mysterious energy circulated to protect himself. Even so, several bone-deep wounds were torn open and blood splattered in all directions. His chest, in particular, had almost been gouged open. That was because the claw just now was a typical black tiger steals the heart, a killer move of the tiger race. Schiller growled. His hair stood on end, and his body seemed to be on fire, emitting terrifying energy fluctuations. He had been enraged. He was burning his blood essence without regard for the price to release the latent potential within his body. Even if his vitality was greatly damaged, he didn't care. Otherwise, he would die here. Bang! He met the Tiger King's claw with all his might. Boom! The undead Phoenix King's tyrannical attack was extremely swift and fierce. It was even more powerful than the Manchurian tiger's attack. Along with a fiery light, a frightening black flame rushed out from the pores of her entire body, accompanied by phoenix cries. One could clearly see that the massive energy had transformed into a vivid and lifelike black phoenix. With a rumble, it engulfed Schiller. This attack destroyed the entire mountainous region. Hundreds of towering trees were destroyed inch by inch and turned into ashes. As for rocks weighing tens of thousands of kilograms, they exploded and turned into magma. The Manchurian tiger leapt up to evade the attack. Even he was almost submerged. The main reason was that the undead phoenix's eyes were bloodshot. She had prepared this killer move in a hurry to quickly and effectively cripple Schiller. This strike was indeed quite terrifying. Schiller was sent flying, half of his body covered in blood. Many of his bones were exposed, and he was severely burned. Everything started when Chu Feng used the diamond chakram and tore off one of Schiller's arms, greatly reducing his battle prowess. Then, he was attacked by the Tiger King and the Phoenix King, causing his body to grow weaker and weaker. Schiller was in great pain. It wasn't that he didn't want to escape, but rather that he was being pincered by two powerful experts. Just a moment ago, he was almost slaughtered. Kill! He struggled, wanting to break out of the encirclement. If he continued to fight, he would only be courting death. Every second that passed would bring him closer to death. However, the undead Phoenix King and the Manchurian tiger's eyes were bloodshot. How could they let such a good opportunity slip by? They went all out to stop him. Chu Feng's speed was very fast. He rushed into the forest to find the diamond chakram. This was truly a troublesome problem. Every time he attacked, he would have to spend a lot of effort to find it. Fortunately, he didn't have to worry about losing it due to his king-level divine instinct. He found it very quickly and used his spiritual energy from dozens of meters away. With a swoosh, he drew the chakram into his hand. He then turned around and rushed back, wanting to give Schiller another blow. Schiller was in big trouble. He couldn't escape from the two experts and was sent flying from time to time. Now that he had lost an arm, he was no match for them. He charged forward several times to no avail, but Schiller didn't give up. His hair was disheveled as he roared repeatedly. There was a layer of burning bloody mist around his body. This was a sign of overload. He was fighting with all his might to escape this mountainous region. He didn't want to be entangled by experts with 6 severed shackles. If that happened, he would undoubtedly die. Roar! The Manchurian tiger, wrapped in a monastic robe, was attacking frantically. Today's opportunity was hard to come by. Moreover, he himself would become Schiller's main target. After returning, Chu Feng gazed at the distant battlefield without batting an eyelid. He quietly passed the diamond chakram to Yellow Ox because he felt that Schiller would be on his guard if he were to attack again. I'll most likely be able to kill him this time. The black yak was glaring at Schiller like a tiger watching its prey. He almost couldn't resist the urge to pounce on Schiller, but after calming down, he understood that he was no match for Schiller. Even though Schiller was gravely injured, he was still one of the strongest experts at the time. Especially now, he was like a cornered beast. In the distance, Linoy was still calm. Her hair fluttered in the wind, and her beautiful eyes shone with a profound light. She had read many secret reports in celestial biology and understood how terrifying people at this level were. The only thing that surprised her was Chu Feng. This ex-boyfriend of hers had actually produced such a weapon just now. It could be said that he had turned the tide of the battle. White Tiger and Lu Shiyun were deeply astonished. This was the first time they had witnessed a battle between peerless experts at such a close distance. This was especially true after Chu Feng's fatal blow, which had cut off one of Schiller's arms. White Tiger's view of the world had been turned upside down. He was indescribably shocked. This was the first time he realized how powerful Demon King Chu was. He had actually participated in a battle between peerless experts. It could be said that Chu Feng's attack had played a crucial role. It had directly reduced Schiller's combat strength and weakened his body rapidly. Lu Shiyun was so shocked that her small mouth formed an O shape. Her beautiful eyes were wide open. Before this, even though she knew that Chu Feng was powerful, she still couldn't imagine that he would dare to exchange blows with a peerless expert. Yaman was dispirited and listless. He couldn't escape even if he wanted to. Both his legs were broken, and his face was devoid of blood. He had personally witnessed this battle, and even his soul was trembling. The Demon King Chu he looked down upon had actually wounded Schiller. He glanced at the elegant and otherworldly Linoy, then at Chu Feng, and finally at the battered and exhausted Schiller. Yaman was utterly disheartened. He was such a failure that he couldn't escape even if he wanted to. Schiller's eyes were profound. He quickly calmed down and began to search for an opportunity to break out of the encirclement. Today was truly unfortunate. He had rushed over as soon as he received news of Yaman's arrival, thinking that he could easily kill Chu Feng's group. Who would have thought that this was a trap? Schiller had always looked down on Yaman because he felt that he wouldn't amount to much. He had never imagined that Yaman would be so deceitful as to drag him into this mess. Schiller was sent flying with wounds all over his body, but he had no other choice. He had tried to break out of the encirclement several times, but each time he was intercepted by the two experts. The next moment, the Manchurian tiger's claws left a bloody hole in his back, further injuring him. At the same time, the undead phoenix transformed into her true form. A pair of blade-like wings hacked down on Schiller, almost tearing his stomach open. Schiller was sent flying backwards with his head held high. The wound on his abdomen was horrifying, staining the ground red with blood. Schiller was anxious. He couldn't fly away even if he wanted to. His back had long since been torn apart. Although the wings of light and darkness were formed from energy, they still required physical strength to form. Mount Longhu. In the end, Schiller's eyes emitted a blazing radiance. He clenched his teeth and made up his mind to charge toward the ancestral court of the Taoist school. The Manchurian tiger and the undead phoenix were on guard against his escape. They didn't stop him from running in the direction of Mount Longhu. That was a dangerous place where no one could go. Schiller had no other choice. Only by running here would he have a chance to catch his breath and survive. He rolled on the ground, covered in divine blood and smeared with mud. He cut a sorry figure, but his eyes became increasingly fierce. With a swoosh, he rushed toward Mount Longhu. He shot a glance at the nearby Chu Feng with a cold glint in his eyes. The myriad spirit blood medicine was destroyed by this young man, and now he had lost an arm because of him. The hatred in his heart was extremely intense. Schiller's entire body was emitting a bloody radiance. He was sparing no expense to expend his energy. He wanted to finish off Chu Feng along the way. Not long ago, he had been struck by the diamond chakram. It could be said that he had been careless. How could he have known that there was a difference between a real and a fake bracelet? This time, he wouldn't be fooled again. Boom! A rain of blood sprayed out from Schiller's back. This was the side effect of using more power than his body could handle. His skin cracked and blood spurted out. Chu Feng had purposely stood there to attract Schiller's attention and give Yellow Cattle an opportunity to kill him. Of course, this was a risky move. He didn't have the diamond chakram to protect himself, so he had to endure the crazy attacks of a peerless expert with 6 severed shackles. The undead phoenix and the Manchurian tiger were shocked. They hadn't expected Chu Feng to get so close to the battlefield. This was too rash. They had originally thought that he would hide far enough, so the 2 experts hurriedly gave chase. Schiller, go to hell! Chu Feng was about to strike out with the diamond chakram. Schiller's movements suddenly became erratic. His eyes shot out a meter-long beam of light that resembled 2 divine swords. He stared fixedly at Chu Feng. He was highly concentrated to ensure that he could effectively evade that dazzling bracelet. In another direction, Yellow Cattle's palms were drenched in sweat. He was somewhat nervous. If he were to miss Schiller, Chu Feng's life would be in danger even if he didn't die. Schiller's spirit was highly strained, but he was mainly on guard against Chu Feng's diamond chakram. He had completely ignored the beautiful child on the other side. Yellow Cattle didn't look more than 5 or 6 years old. His golden hair was soft and supple, and his face was exquisite. His large eyes were sparkling, and he seemed to lack killing intent. Buzz! The air exploded as the diamond chakram flew out at 6 times the speed of sound. It was extremely resplendent and blossomed with snow-white light. It was like a sun traversing the void as it struck towards Schiller. In the distance, Yaman shouted in an attempt to warn Schiller, but it was to no avail. The shining bracelet surpassed the speed of sound. With a puff, it pierced through Schiller's body, causing him to stagger back amidst a shower of blood. The diamond chakram pierced through his back and emerged from his chest. It possessed tremendous destructive power, and one of his lungs was immediately smashed into pieces. The right side of his chest was blasted open, revealing an astonishing bloody hole that went from front to back. Yellow Cattle sighed inwardly. It was a pity that the attack hadn't struck Schiller's heart. Otherwise, Schiller would have most likely died. However, Schiller was now much weaker than before. The Manchurian tiger and the undead phoenix were more than enough to finish him off. However, Yellow Cattle was horrified at the very next moment. Schiller's eyes were glowing with hatred. Despite being wounded, he still pounced towards Chu Feng. The distance was too close. A palm descended, and radiance blossomed. Clang! Chu Feng shot out the scarlet flying knife. It was like a burning sunset, illuminating the entire sky. Schiller's right palm was pierced, and blood splattered everywhere. This result not only shocked Chu Feng, but also caused Schiller's pupils to constrict. He knew things were bad. He had overdrawn himself, and the energy within his body was almost exhausted. Otherwise, how could he have failed to block such an attack with his tyrannical strength? Even a flying knife wouldn't be able to kill him. Schiller was very decisive. Even though he hated Chu Feng to the core, he gave up and ran straight for Mount Longhu. Seeing this, Chu Feng shot out his flying knife and gave chase. "Where do you think you're going, old man?" The black yak ran madly in pursuit. Chapter 227. Old man, you still want to enter the ancestral court of Taoism? How dare you blaspheme Mount Longhu? Where do you think you're going? The black yak roared from behind. Furthermore, he tossed out the purple copper blade in his hand. With a buzzing sound, it streaked through the air at several times the speed of sound toward Schiller. In the distance, the white tiger and Lu Shiyun were dumbfounded. The peerless expert who had shaken the east and the west was now in such a miserable state. He was being chased with no way out. Yaman, on the other hand, was paralyzed with despair. Who would come to save him if even Schiller had been defeated? Before this, he had walked proudly in the east with incomparable confidence. Now, however, he was about to become a prisoner. On Mount Longhu, Schiller suddenly stopped in his tracks. He could sense the danger in this area. Chi! The violet copper blade thrown by the black yak narrowly missed Schiller. It brushed past his body and stabbed into a distant rock. Chu Feng also stopped in his tracks. The The scarlet flying knife hovered in front of him, ready to launch a fierce attack at any moment. Behind him, the black yak chased up the mountain. However, before he could get very far, he felt his heart throbbing and his chest becoming stuffy. The undead phoenix and the Manchurian tiger also stopped and frowned. The aura of this place was too strange. It was suppressing them and alerting them. The group didn't dare to take large strides up the mountain. This place suppresses the beast race. Yellow Cattle whispered. The atmosphere on Mount Longhu was extraordinary. Every ancient tree was like a hibernating dragon. Even the bare mountain walls were flowing with a crystalline luster. This was only the foot of the mountain, far from the peak. Yet, it was already extraordinary. Chu Feng stared at Schiller. He could feel the latter's weakness. This was the best opportunity to eliminate him. But why hadn't the undead phoenix and the Manchurian tiger caught up? Soon he understood. Just as Yellow Cattle had said, Mount Longhu was suppressing the beast race. Although they were advancing, their expressions were solemn and their speed was slow. Schiller was in a dilemma. There were pursuers behind him and danger ahead. Chu Feng attacked with the scarlet flying knife. There was nothing to be afraid of. The old man was extremely weak right now, so it was a good opportunity to kill him. The palm-sized blade was as bright as red coral, emitting a sparkling and translucent luster. Accompanied by terrifying energy fluctuations, it cleaved towards Schiller. Whoosh! Schiller shifted his body to the side. The moment he turned back, his eyes were filled with a bone-chilling coldness. He felt extremely sullen. A young man with 4 severed shackles actually dared to chase after him. This was simply a joke in the past. Moreover, this young man had great enmity with him. He wanted nothing more than to kill him immediately, but right now, he was powerless to do so. Without a word, Chu Feng had seen through him and launched an all-out assault on his flying sword. In the blink of an eye, sword energy shot out in all directions and a red mist surged. The palm-sized flying sword was like a flood dragon as it circled around and attacked Schiller. Schiller was very strong. He constantly dodged and didn't dare to face the attack head-on. Even so, he was still injured, and his left palm was dripping with blood. Puff! The most serious injury was when the flying sword circled around and brushed past his neck, almost slashing it open. "If you force me like this, don't blame me for fighting you to the death," Schiller said coldly. "I won't rest until you die." Chu Feng replied coldly. Back at the sacred medicinal garden, he had almost been tricked to death by this old man. So many kings had lost their lives. He was only lucky enough to escape. "Don't force me to disregard everything and run away to kill your parents." Schiller's expression was frosty, and his eyes were sinister. He was threatening Chu Feng in a cold voice. It was obvious that he had no way out after being forced to this point. Otherwise, the great Schiller wouldn't have dared to threaten him like this. Chu Feng's heart was in turmoil as he attacked frantically. He couldn't let this madman go. He knew that Schiller hated him to the core. If he wanted to eliminate all future troubles, the best way was to kill this person on the spot. Schiller glanced back at him coldly and suddenly rushed up the mountain. The scarlet flying sword chased after him like a flood dragon. With a puff, it opened up a wound on his back. Schiller was furious. Back then, he had lost his ancient sword and was being hunted down by the 8 Visions Temple, the Hollow Jade Temple, and the Roaming Jade Temple. At one point, he had despaired and lost all his weapons. Otherwise, he wouldn't have ended up in such a sorry state with that ancient sword in his hand. Very well. Chu Feng revealed an odd expression as he followed from behind. Mount Longhu was extremely dangerous. It was best for him to force Schiller to scout the way for him. "Chu Feng, catch!" Yellow Cattle shouted from behind. He tossed the diamond chakram over. He didn't pour any energy into it. Otherwise, it would have turned into a great killing weapon. With a swoosh, Chu Feng used his spiritual energy to receive the chakram. He continued to chase after Schiller with the diamond chakram in hand. Now, he was full of confidence. "Damn it, this damned place is making me feel more and more uncomfortable," the black yak growled. The Manchurian tiger also felt uneasy from head to toe. They were climbing the mountain behind them, and it was difficult for them to unleash their full speed. They were suppressed by an indescribable power, and they couldn't help but feel terrified. Even the undead Phoenix King's heart was palpitating. Her whole body was covered in raging black flames. She was ready for battle. There were many corpses along the way, many of which belonged to kings. In the past few days, Beast Kings would climb the mountain from time to time. They wanted to climb to the peak, but in the end, they died on the way down the mountain. Chu Feng was neither too fast nor too slow. He activated his flying sword and forced Schiller to flee. This was tantamount to scouting out a path for him. There was a terraced field with brilliant green multicolored light and rising purple energy. This place was quite astonishing, and even Schiller was astonished. Could it be that there were divine plants growing here? Chu Feng quickly approached. He also saw that the spiritual energy here was rich, and auspicious light lingered in this area. A stone tablet was erected outside the terraced fields, and a few ancient words were carved on it. Celestial Master Demon, Subduing Technique. It was actually a row of words that astonished everyone. This was definitely a stone tablet that had emerged from the ground after the upheaval. It didn't exist on Mount Longhu in the past. Schiller's eyes lit up. He had always coveted the Eastern Divine Mountain and had done extensive research into ancient China's culture. He could recognize these ancient words. Even though he was heavily injured, he was still excited. One had to know that Mount Longhu was an extraordinary place. It was the ancestral court of Taoism and had always been overseen by a celestial master. To actually see such an ancient tablet here made his heart beat faster. Chu Feng slashed out with his sword, but Schiller immediately leapt up and evaded the attack. He then ran forward at top speed. The two entered the depths of the terrace fields in tandem and finally saw the plants shrouded in auspicious radiance. There were dozens of eggplant seedlings here. Their leaves were dark green and glistening with multicolored light. Eggplants that looked like they were cast from purple gold had a metallic texture and were suffused with purple mist. What was going on? Chu Feng was puzzled. Even Schiller was suspicious. How could there be such strange eggplants growing in the terraced fields with the Celestial Master Demon Subduing Technique? From the looks of it, they had only ripened in the past few days. The eggplants were growing well, and the fist-sized purple gold eggplants were emitting a faint fragrance. Could these be considered divine fruits? Chu Feng's heart skipped a beat. Schiller was also suspicious. He maintained a safe distance from Chu Feng. A fervent glow suddenly appeared in his eyes. If these could also be considered mutant fruits, then his injuries would be healed very soon. Chu Feng took action and slashed at Schiller. He had to stop this fierce expert with 6 severed shackles from eating the purple gold eggplants and recovering. Schiller sneered. Even though he was weak, he couldn't be killed in an instant. He evaded with great speed and rushed towards the purple gold eggplants. There were dozens of them here, all bearing fruits that could be easily plucked. The flying sword left a terrifying wound on Schiller's body, but at this time, Schiller had also managed to touch one of the purple gold eggplants. Suddenly, a shocking change occurred. Purple mist blossomed, and auspicious chi surged into the sky. At the same time, there was a loud explosion. The purple gold eggplant immediately transformed into a bolt of lightning and sent Schiller flying. His entire body was emitting green smoke as he spasmed continuously. Chu Feng didn't even have the time to rejoice before he was also struck. There were simply too many eggplants in the area. One by one, they automatically fell off and transformed into purple lightning. Crackle! Chu Feng was immediately shaken by the electricity. He couldn't evade at all. His whole body was covered in arcs of electricity and was in great pain. He hurriedly activated his abilities. His left hand glowed as he dispelled the lightning. That was because he had gained the ability to control electricity after severing his 4th shackle. Even so, he was still in a sorry state. His body was charred black as he was sent flying. That damned Heavenly Master Demon Subduing Technique. Chu Feng cursed. With a swoosh, Chu Feng jumped out of the terrace field and flew upwards. But when he landed, he was immediately distressed. This was because the terraced field was filled with jade-green cucumbers that were gushing with multicolored light. Schiller was in a miserable state. He was struck by the purple lightning and landed on the cucumber vines. Boom! The cucumbers on the vines immediately exploded and transformed into green lightning that interweaved in the air. The two of them were struck until their bodies trembled and were char-black. The two of them had been struck by the lightning and suffered even more injuries. Although they wouldn't die for the time being, the situation wasn't looking good either. This feeling was simply too unbearable. This was especially true for Schiller. His wounds were no longer bleeding because they were already emitting a charred smell. There were too many cucumber vines and countless green lightning bolts. The two of them had no choice but to flee. There was no way they could stay here any longer. Going back the way they came wasn't an option. The purple-gold eggplants were still displaying their might. The dense purple lightning had sealed off the path. Chu Feng braced himself and jumped upwards. Although Schiller's injuries were serious, he reacted quickly and also ran for his life at the first opportunity. He leapt up and arrived at another terrace field. This area was rather odd. Every time they leapt up, they would only land in the neighboring terraced fields. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't escape. In that instant, both of their faces became green because this terrace was covered in a bright red expanse. Tomatoes were planted all over the ground, growing vigorously. Every single one of them had a few fruits hanging from them, bright red and glistening, releasing scarlet multicolored light. As expected, something terrifying happened after they landed. Scarlet lightning interweaved and transformed the bright red tomatoes into streaks of lightning. Damn you, Schiller. Why did you pick tomatoes for no reason? Chu Feng cursed. If it wasn't for Schiller's purple lightning interweaving, things wouldn't have turned out this way. They hadn't even touched the tomatoes yet, but the fruits had already turned into scarlet radiance and exploded with lightning. This time, Chu Feng was in a miserable state. His whole body was in pain, and his mouth was spewing white smoke and crackling arcs of lightning. As for Schiller, he was in an even worse state. The smell of roasted meat was wafting out of his mouth. The main reason was that his previous injuries were too severe. His defenses were rapidly declining. God damn it, what's going on? The black yak was dumbfounded. How come the terraced fields above them were suddenly filled with lightning? Furthermore, they could vaguely see eggplants, cucumbers, and tomatoes jumping around in the midst of the lightning. It was an extremely bizarre scene. Purple gold eggplants, green cucumbers, scarlet tomatoes. This looks like the Taoist lineage's Five Below Thunderstruck. Yellow Cattle's expression changed. What kind of place is that? Is Chu Feng's life in danger? The black yak asked. It looks like a place that cultivates lightning of the five elements. It also looks like a place of inheritance. Yellow Cattle stared at the sky. After being bombarded by the scarlet radiance of the tomatoes, even Chu Feng couldn't take it anymore, let alone Schiller, who had already suffered grievous injuries. At this moment, they couldn't care less about killing each other. They ran with all their might and jumped into the fourth terraced field. How come there's still more? Chu Feng and Schiller wanted to curse out loud, especially after seeing what was below them. Their faces turned ashen and unsightly. There were pumpkins growing all over the ground. Every pumpkin was golden and incomparably dazzling. Moreover, they were as big as a wash basin, much bigger than eggplants, cucumbers, and tomatoes. This time, Chu Feng didn't want to fight head-on. He stood on his flying sword and swayed unsteadily as he flew higher. An ominous glint flashed in Schiller's eyes. Before he even landed, he directly slapped down with his palm. His palm lit up and activated the golden pumpkins. Damn you, Schiller, Chu Feng shouted. He wanted nothing more than to kill Schiller. Crackle. Golden lightning intertwined. Chu Feng swayed unsteadily on his flying sword. He had already been struck by the lightning. His whole body was covered in arcs of electricity, and smoke was rising from his flesh. He endured the pain and drove the flying sword through the golden lightning, landing on the fifth terraced field. Chu Feng, hold on. That might be the place of inheritance. Yellow Ox shouted from below. His voice was faintly transmitted through the lightning. Call for recommendation votes. If you have monthly votes, please support the holy ground. Chapter 228. The soil in the fifth field was sparkling and lush with plants. Chu Feng's heart skipped a beat. He had indeed been traumatized by the explosion. As expected, the lightning exploded with a boom. Sweet potatoes emerged from the soil one after another and whizzed out, transforming into silver lightning which began to bombard the area. His flesh was lacerated and his hair stood on end. Many parts of his body were charred black, as arcs of electricity surged through every inch of his skin. If it weren't for the astonishing amount of energy he had gained after becoming a king-level entity, an ordinary person would have long since been reduced to ashes. How unlucky! Silver light interweaved in the area as sweet potatoes and sweet potatoes danced in the air. Chu Feng had nothing to say. He only wanted to curse. What the hell was this? Even the eggplants, tomatoes, and sweet potatoes had turned into spirits? Even someone as powerful as him couldn't endure such a chaotic bombardment. If he were to survive and one day tell others about today's experience, he would probably be laughed at. Almost dying from a sweet potato explosion was simply too embarrassing. Chu Feng endured the pain and once again used his spiritual energy to move his body. He staggered off the ground in an attempt to escape the fifth field. The sweet potatoes bounced around and smashed into his body. This kind of suffering was hard to imagine. He felt as though he was about to be cooked alive. He could clearly smell the fragrance of roasted meat. This wasn't Schiller's, but rather his own. His faith had wavered. Could it be that he was suffering retribution for roasting king-level entities all the time? Swoosh! Finally, he broke free from the fifth-step field and landed on the mountain above. With a bang, he smashed here and couldn't get up for a long time. I've escaped. Chu Feng was filled with joy. He lay on the ground, not wanting to move at all. He took in large gulps of fresh air greedily. At this time, the fragrance of the earth and vegetation entered his nose. He felt an unprecedented sense of comfort. The first thing Chu Feng did was to circulate his breathing technique. Crackling sounds rang out continuously from within his body. That was because the electric arcs were still there and hadn't been completely discharged. They were running amok within his body. Many parts of his body were numb and almost roasted. Fortunately, the breathing technique had a miraculous effect on his injuries. He quickly suppressed the pain, and the energy in his body began to repair his injuries. After a while, he sat up and looked down at the terraced field below. He frowned deeply. There, purple gold eggplants, dark green cucumbers, scarlet tomatoes, golden pumpkins, and silver sweet potatoes were jumping merrily with dense lightning. He could already tell that these were rare and strange crops. The plants were real, but the fruits were produced from lightning. He really wanted to curse out loud. The ancient great powers were too vile, using fruits and vegetables to torment their descendants. And it was even so fatal. Those plants were very special. They could gather lightning and produce lightning fruits. When hung on the plants, their power was astonishing. He reckoned that this wasn't even the strongest power. As the world recovered, these plants would probably become even more astonishing and form 5 lightning fields. Inheritance. Chu Feng heard Yellow Cattle's voice transmission and saw a stone tablet in the safe zone. As expected, there was a similar notification. There's a hidden lightning technique. There were words on the stone tablet, telling the later generations that only by withstanding the lightning and not dying would one be able to obtain the Heavenly Master Demon subduing art. The ancient Heavenly Masters often used lightning to subdue demons. Is this the so-called demon subduing art? He frowned as he stared at the words on the back of the stone tablet. One had to stay in the terraced fields and silently comprehend the power of lightning in order to obtain the inheritance. He had just escaped, yet he still had to enter a land of death. Chu Feng sat down cross-legged and used his breathing technique to recover. At the same time, he looked down for Schiller. The most important thing at the moment was to kill this old bastard. The other party hadn't come up. Could it be that he had been struck to death? He couldn't be at ease without seeing Schiller's corpse. This was a ruthless character and wouldn't die so easily. Don't tell me this madman happened to know the secret and is comprehending the demon's subduing art. Chu Feng was startled. With a swoosh, he couldn't sit still any longer. He used his spiritual energy to move himself into the air and look down. As expected, he saw something strange. A hazy ball of light had formed in the field with the golden pumpkin. Schiller was sitting there, completely motionless. He was about to turn into a pile of charcoal, but he wasn't dead yet. At this time, the lightning was no longer striking him. Instead, it had transformed into a screen of light and enveloped him. Is this old monster trying to defy the heavens? Chu Feng was astonished and then nervous. If Schiller didn't die and obtain the demon's subduing art, then he would be in big trouble. With a swoosh, he braced himself and dived down. Once again, he endured the lightning strikes and arrived at the field where Schiller was. There, he used his flying knife to slash at it. Clang! The screen of light was as hard as metal. Sparks flew everywhere as the flying knife slashed at it, but it didn't break. At the same time, Chu Feng noticed Schiller's state. He had lost his right hand, and now his left hand was resting on a pumpkin seedling. It was as if he was comprehending something. Although his face was char-black, he seemed to be very satisfied. Chu Feng tried several times, but to no avail. With a swoosh, he left the field and arrived at the first terrace field while enduring the pain of being struck by lightning. He sat down cross-legged and tried to comprehend it. This was a form of torture. His body was in great pain as the purple lightning coiled around him, almost piercing through his flesh. He didn't know how Schiller had done it. Perhaps it was an accident, or perhaps he really was extraordinary. Chu Feng felt a sense of urgency. He held an eggplant seedling in his left hand. The joints in his body crackled, as if he was being tempered by lightning. However, it was really effective. That was because his left hand could produce lightning after severing his fourth shackle. Now that he was comprehending here, it had an astonishing catalytic effect. Strands of vein patterns appeared and blossomed from the eggplant seedling, taking shape in the palm of his hand. This is the demon's subduing art. Chu Feng was astonished. Legend had it that the heavenly masters of ancient times liked to use talismans to subdue demons. They would throw them out to summon lightning. Could this be a talisman? Chu Feng was suspicious. However, it was obviously different from the rumors. He didn't need to draw any talismans himself. These vein patterns appeared on his left palm and condensed into an imprint. Boom! He raised his hand and shot out a bolt of lightning from his palm. It struck the ground in the distance, causing the earth and rocks to collapse. He was astonished to find that the lightning in the field had stopped attacking him. It had actually become gentler. It's that easy? Chu Feng's expression was odd. He held the eggplant seedling in his hand and captured the strands of vein patterns. He then tried to construct them, and they appeared on his palm. Actually, he didn't know the principles behind them. Was this the so-called comprehension? He was seriously doubtful. However, Chu Feng didn't care about this. He once again held another eggplant seedling and examined whether it contained different vein patterns. In the end, he found that all the seedlings in this field were the same. They all had the same vein pattern, which appeared clearly on his left palm. With a swoosh, Chu Feng jumped onto the second terrace. Very soon, he obtained a different type of vein pattern from the cucumber seedling. This made the imprint on his left palm a bit more complicated. Isn't this too fast? In truth, if Yellow Cattle were here, he would naturally be able to dispel his doubts. The reason he could comprehend so quickly was because he had obtained the ability to produce lightning after severing his fourth shackle. Following that, everything went surprisingly smoothly. He obtained more and more veined patterns in succession, and a strange lightning symbol appeared on his left palm. If he didn't use it, there would be nothing there. Once he tried to generate electricity, the symbol would become extremely dazzling and appear. It increased my control over electricity by several times. Chu Feng was astonished. Now that he had condensed lightning in his left hand, it was much more powerful than before. His power had increased by several times. it was very likely that he would be able to kill ordinary king-level entities in one strike. This is only the beginning, yet the power of lightning has already doubled. How abnormal. Chu Feng was shaken. The heavenly master demon subduing technique was indeed extraordinary. In ancient times, the beast races were most afraid of lightning. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call this technique a demon subduing technique. In the distance, Schiller was shocked and furious. He had just finished comprehending the lightning patterns on the pumpkin field when all the lightning disappeared. This caused him to feel regretful and apprehensive. Now, the other 4 fields had returned to normal. There was no more lightning. You've obtained the complete inheritance? He stared at Chu Feng unwillingly. Go to hell, Chu Feng shouted. Although his body was char-black and riddled with scars, he was still much stronger than Schiller. The latter had long since become half-crippled. Boom! His left palm lit up as lightning runes appeared. A blinding beam of light shot out towards Schiller with a speed even faster than a flying sword. Schiller was shocked and furious. He understood that the other party had obtained the demon subduing technique from Mount Longhu. This was a terrible situation for him. He had guessed that this so-called demon subduing technique was a test. Only by comprehending this trial and obtaining the secret inheritance would one have a chance to occupy Mount Longhu. Boom! Schiller naturally couldn't just sit and wait for death. Even if he was on the verge of death, he still wanted to fight for his life. As they attacked, the entire area collapsed. The 5 terraced fields sank inexplicably as all the crops withered. Boom! Earth and stone collapsed, and a large crater appeared in this area. Many broken weapons and skeletons were revealed, all of them ancient. Chu Feng was astonished. There were many large skeletons of beasts beneath the 5 terraced fields. According to the ancient people, they were naturally demons. How is this possible? Schiller's eyes went wide as he saw some human skeletons. His face was full of shock as he saw some Western armor. It was the radiant armor that belonged to the Knights of the Holy See. How many years ago were these people from ancient times? Schiller was so shocked that he couldn't speak. All of a sudden, he saw a skeleton that was still emitting a faint light. It was definitely the remains of a knight far stronger than him. His eyes widened as he trembled. That was because the broken armor on the knight was a relic from the era when the Holy See first appeared. It was an item from over 2,000 years ago. Did the Holy See launch an expedition to the east 2,000 years ago when the Holy See first appeared? This completely overturned his understanding. Even someone as powerful as Schiller didn't know about this. Dying, Chu Feng attacked once more, blasting out lightning. Schiller didn't dare to meet the attack head-on. He felt that he would most likely die if he were to be hit. His current state was too poor. He rushed towards the remains of the powerful knight. There was a sword hilt with a 3-inch long broken blade emitting a silvery radiance. He suspected that it was left behind by a supreme, ancient weapon. He decided to take a gamble. If he fought against Chu Feng, he would die without a doubt. Moreover, he couldn't escape at the moment because he was in a terrible state. If that sword hilt was a legendary supreme weapon, it might be able to turn the tide of the battle. Schiller was extremely fast. He grabbed the hilt of his sword and turned around to face Chu Feng. Boom! He was struck by lightning. With a pop, the lower half of his body exploded. Chapter 229. Fresh blood sprayed out as Schiller's head was separated from his body. The excruciating pain filled him with boundless resentment and confusion. In that split second, Schiller wanted to curse out loud. That was a suspected divine weapon. How could it be ineffective? Damn it. At the last moment, apart from the pain, he wanted to curse out loud. How could it be like this? That sword hilt in his hand was absolutely extraordinary. Although the remaining blade was less than 3 inches long, it should still possess the legendary might. As the last holy knight of the Holy See, he knew full well how terrifying legendary weapons were. This was especially true for a divine weapon from 2,000 years ago. It was destined to shake the world. It might not be able to burn mountains and boil seas, but it was more than enough to kill a king-level expert. At the last moment, he let out a mournful howl. Of course, it didn't come from his mouth because his head had already been separated from his body. It was a spiritual howl. Chu Feng was also surprised. From his point of view, Schiller's final counterattack should have been quite destructive. Who would have thought that he would be able to decapitate him with a single strike? That sword hilt. He was suspicious because Schiller was still staring at the hilt at the last moment. Did he think he could turn the tables with it? All of a sudden, Chu Feng's pupils constricted. He felt that something was wrong. The radiance emitted by the sword hilt had changed and was rapidly intensifying. The silver light pulsed and gushed out like raging flames. He hurriedly mobilized all his strength and attacked with all his might. A shocking change occurred. The simple and unadorned sword hilt was as dazzling as the sun. It was so glaring that one could hardly open their eyes. Accompanied by Schiller's spiritual howl, the scene was somewhat terrifying. Boom! Chu Feng's left palm glowed as lightning runes condensed. A powerful thunderbolt blasted the hilt and engulfed Schiller's body. Additionally, his flying sword shot out and slashed forward. It was like a scarlet flood dragon soaring through the sky, spiraling amidst the resplendent radiance. At the same time, he retreated and took off the diamond chakram, ready to smash it at any moment. The sound of thunder exploded and the scene was terrifying. The scorching lightning filled the area and clashed with the sword hilt like an avalanche or a tsunami. In a trance, time froze and time flowed in reverse. Scene after scene of terrifying scenes appeared. Are they holy knights from the Holy Church? Troop after troop of people arrived at Mount Longhu, clad in radiant armor of an ancient style. Every single one of them possessed powerful auras. It was unknown why they were here, but they actually wanted to attack and occupy this place. In the end, a few Taoist priests took action and fought against the Eastern punitive expedition from 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. Unfortunately, the scene was blurry and some things could not be seen. In the end, this place was turned upside down. Chu Feng immediately understood. In the distant past, the Eastern punitive expedition had come to Mount Longhu, but they had failed. This was simply unimaginable. What era was that? There were actually no records of it being passed down. This was a hidden truth. Mount Longhu was the ancestral court of Taoism and was also known as the Taoist capital. This was the capital of Taoism, and this kind of place was naturally very important. The fact that the church had come on a punitive expedition really made one's imagination run wild. They really wanted to find out the truth of that period of time. The Eastern punitive expedition was annihilated, all of them dying here. Those scenes flashed by and eventually disappeared. The sword hilt was just a medium, recording some of the events of the past. Boom! The great explosion was very terrifying. The power of the lightning from Chu Feng's palm was too great. This was Mount Longhu's demon-subduing technique, and it was also the second time after so many years that the Taoist capital and the church were clashing. Dang! As the lightning interweaved, the flying sword was blasted away. This caused Chu Feng to feel apprehensive. His scarlet flying sword had always been unstoppable, but now it couldn't do anything to a broken sword hilt. It was as resplendent as the blazing sun. The sword hilt could no longer be seen clearly, but it was extremely fierce. It was as if a hibernating sacred beast had awakened. Chu Feng did not hesitate. He used all his strength and directly smashed out the diamond chakram. He poured all the mysterious energy in his body, causing its power to reach its peak. Dong! It was as if a great star from outer space had flown over and smashed into the earth. This was a kind of heaven and earth collapsing feeling as a great collision occurred. The diamond chakram collided with the sword hilt. Boundless divine splendor covered the entire area, and it was accompanied by a terrifying sound like that of a tsunami. In addition, hymns from the west could be heard. A divine aura pervaded the air, and radiance illuminated everything. Chu Feng retreated again and again at an extremely fast speed. He was afraid that something unexpected would happen because he could guess from the brief scene just now that this sword hilt had a great origin. It was a legendary weapon from the west. In the end, the radiance disappeared, and the scenery in the area became clearly visible. Where was the sword hilt? Chu Feng was astonished. It had disappeared. The diamond chakram was still snow-white. It hadn't flown far and fell into the large pit. Chu Feng used his spiritual energy to draw it over with a swoosh. He held it in his hand and observed it carefully. It wasn't damaged at all. There wasn't even a scratch on its surface. This made him heave a sigh of relief. One had to know that it was very likely that the weapon just now was a legendary weapon with a frightening origin. He was starting to believe Yellow Cattle's words now. This thing was very evil. Yellow Cattle had already changed his words. He felt that the diamond chakram's material was too mysterious, and calling it an ultimate waste wasn't exactly correct. Schiller, your death isn't to be regretted. Chu Feng looked at the bloodstains on the ground without any sympathy. At the last moment, Schiller's broken body, including his decapitated head, exploded. The whole area was in a complete mess. Is he trying to open a dye shop? The Black Yak and the others had finally arrived. All of them felt suffocated and their souls were throbbing. They weren't used to this place. Mount Longhu naturally suppressed all beasts. Even the powerful Siberian tiger and the undead phoenix found it hard to endure. They wanted nothing more than to leave this place. If it wasn't for killing Schiller and plucking the divine fruits from the mountain peak, they wouldn't have set foot here. Schiller has been killed by you. The Manchurian tiger's expression was somewhat comical. His hair was combed back, just like the Black Yak's, but he was wearing a bright red monastic robe. I almost died myself. This place is very strange, Chu Feng said. The lightning from before had caused him great suffering. Even now, his body still smelled of roasted meat. His body was charred black, and his flesh was lacerated. His injuries were serious. Chu Feng was puzzled. He looked everywhere, but couldn't find the sword hilt. That thing had been sent flying by the diamond chakram. Schiller is finally dead. We can finally breathe a sigh of relief. The Manchurian tiger laughed loudly. Otherwise, he would feel uneasy and worried about being assassinated by Schiller. The undead phoenix sighed. She had finally gotten her revenge, but she couldn't recover her memories. Her heart was filled with disappointment and frustration. Take a look. What is this place? Chu Feng asked them to observe the pit. There were many great demon corpses here, as well as many broken armors and skeletons of knights from the ancient church. So much so that Chu Feng was shocked to find that there were some Western dragon skeletons within the pit. One could only imagine how bitter the war back then was. Even a dragon race had participated in it. The Taoist capital, the capital of the Taoists. Western divine knights had once marched to the east and attacked the city. Why are they here? Yellow Cattle, the Manchurian tiger, and the others were bewildered after hearing Chu Feng's narration of what had just happened. They were all guessing one after another. They searched around and found many broken weapons in the pit. They should have possessed terrifying might in the past, but now they had all lost their spirituality. In any case, Schiller was dead. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief and was incomparably happy. As for the truth of the ancient times, there was no need to rush into it. It wouldn't affect them much at the moment. Could it be that there really is a legendary weapon hidden beneath Mount Longhu? Chu Feng was suspicious. He recalled the information Qi Honglin from the Preqin Research Institute had divulged. There was a terrifying weapon that even ancient mythological characters praised and envied. It was suspected to be buried beneath Mount Longhu. Next, they discussed whether or not to attack Mount Longhu. Although the Manchurian tiger and the undead phoenix were powerful, they were suppressed here and couldn't exert their full strength. Let's try attacking. Since they had already come this far, they weren't willing to turn back. However, Yellow Cattle's expression changed after walking for a certain distance. They hadn't even reached halfway up the mountain when they sensed the geomagnetic fluctuations. There was a mysterious field energy in this area. Formations and fields are the same thing. They're extremely terrifying. They're mystical places created according to the terrain and can easily trap and kill experts. Yellow Cattle felt a headache coming on. There was a mysterious field energy in this area. It was a name that Chu Feng and the others could understand, a formation. The field energy here is astonishing. It won't be easy to charge through. Yellow Cattle was solemn. As expected, they paid the price for their actions. The Manchurian tiger was gravely injured, and the undead phoenix coughed up blood. That was because in a ravine halfway up the mountain, essence flames of extreme yang were erupting. The Manchurian tiger let out miserable cries. If not for the protection of his monastic robe, he would have lost half his life. The undead phoenix was an expert in the Tao of fire. She felt that she could charge through, but unexpectedly, she was struck by the geomagnetic lightning and was sent flying. Her bones and tendons were almost snapped. With 2 experts with 6 severed shackles injured, they could only stop and go down the mountain. They sighed. This place was simply too difficult to climb. As expected of the ancestral court of Taoism, the capital of the sect, the underground was complicated and the geomagnetic field energy was terrifying. Schiller is dead. At the foot of the mountain, Xiong Kuan and the others cried out in alarm. Chu Feng, Yellow Cattle, and the others were disappointed. They were all regretful that they had failed to climb the mountain. However, the people at the foot of the mountain were in a different mood. White Tiger and Lu Shiyun sighed in admiration. A peerless expert like Schiller had actually died in the hands of Chu Feng. It was truly shocking. Linoy also walked over and helped Chu Feng bandage his wounds. She couldn't remain calm after seeing Schiller die here. Not far away, Yaman was completely disheartened. He had given up all hope. Now that Schiller was dead, who else could save him? That was unless the god behind him descended. But as far as he knew, that god wasn't here yet. He didn't dare act blindly without thinking and needed time. There's a god behind you? Tell us everything you know. Yellow Cattle personally interrogated Yaman. He was very concerned because he was also from the outer realms. He wanted to know which world this person came from. Yaman had long since collapsed. He told them everything he knew without holding back. Unfortunately, he was only a pawn of this world. He was only serving that god and didn't know much. In the end, the black yak gave him a quick death. He waved the violet copper blade in his hand and cut off his head. 2 days later, Linoy left. She was called away by the people from celestial biology. It seemed there was something urgent. On the 3rd day, the undead phoenix bid farewell. She wanted to return to the west and search for her memories. Now that she had gotten her revenge, she didn't want to stay here any longer. She had also tried to climb Mount Longhu, but failed several times. There was no point in continuing the expedition. 5 days later, the Manchurian tiger suffered another serious injury while climbing the mountain. This fellow, who cherished his life, immediately ran away after recovering from his injuries. He booked a flight to the west and prepared to find the old Lama to apologize. Brothers, let's go. Follow the main force of Mount Kunlun to the Himalayas and explore that thunderous ancient temple. Don't waste your time here. These were the Manchurian tiger's words before he left. He urged Chu Feng and the 2 oxen to follow him to the west. During this time, the clairvoyant, clairaudient, Yi Qingru, and Chen Luoyin also arrived. But after witnessing the dangers and terror of Mount Longhu, they sighed and left with Xiong Kuan and the White Tiger siblings. Only Chu Feng, Yellow Cattle, and the Black Yak were left. They planned to observe for a while longer and retreat if they couldn't find anything. During this time, Chu Feng passed on the lightning symbol to the 2 oxen. He told them to study it and see if they could use it to ascend the mountain. Perhaps it was some sort of key. It was also at this time that a shocking piece of news spread and caused a great commotion. Some people said that Chu Feng had grasped a mysterious breathing technique that was reputed to be peerless. This allowed him to suppress experts of the same level. Chapter 230. Calling this breathing technique peerless meant that it was peerless and extraordinary. At the same time, it was also a target to provoke the nerves of the experts. Once everyone became envious, trouble would surely ensue. This was especially true since Chu Feng had fought the strong as the weak, killed the Ash Wolf King, conquered Mount Pan, rampaged through the west, and fought at the foot of Mount Kunlun. He had started out as an ordinary person, but this kind of growth was flabbergasting. The speed of his rise was simply too fast. It was hard not to think about it. Who was the one spreading this news? Chu Feng fell into contemplation. Faces appeared one after the other before fading away. It was difficult for him to grasp the main idea. This was because there were many people who didn't need any evidence for this matter. They could just casually speculate and push him to the heart of the struggle and make enemies out of him. It might be the enemies of the West, the opposing races of the East, or even the major corporations who were afraid of his rapid rise. Last time at the Primordial Club, the marine race expert White Dragon had guessed that he possessed a special breathing technique and wanted to seize it. At that time, Mu Tian, Qi Sheng, and Jiang Luoshan were all present. Were they or the powers behind them inspired by this? Chu Feng's eyes shone with a profound light. No matter who it was, they would have to pay the price for scheming against him. In short, his rise was too fast, and he had been targeted. Chu Feng was quite calm after such a cold arrow was shot at him. There was nothing to be afraid of. The Black Yak cursed. This bastard is truly treacherous. He made enemies for Chu Feng without any effort. Who knows, there might really be some hot-headed youngsters who are jealous and come running over to steal the breathing technique. Yellow Cattle nodded, but he was worried. No one knew better than him how heaven-defying this breathing technique was. If it were to be leaked, even the Outer Realm experts would go crazy, and experts from other realms would rush over to fight for it. Fortunately, no one knew the name of this breathing technique, nor did they know its origins. Currently, it was only a few hostile people who were guiding the wind. How about this? We'll also spread the news and muddy the waters, Chu Feng said. The two oxen had odd expressions after understanding the plan, but they nodded in agreement. Although it's a bit harsh, it's only right to find a few scapegoats to share the damage, haha. The Black Yak laughed. Not long after, a shocking piece of news spread. Mu Tian, the hidden expert of celestial biology, had once accidentally obtained a breathing technique that was suspected to be the inheritance of the ancient immortal Guangchengzi. Guangchengzi was recorded in some ancient books. He was one of the earliest immortals in ancient China. As soon as this news came out, it caused quite a commotion. Soon, there were people who uncovered the truth and revealed a lot of shocking information. Although Mu Tian was still very young, it was revealed that he had become a mutant 21 years ago. His strength was unfathomable, but he had always kept a low profile. Then, the mutant showed up and said that he could testify that Mu Tian had indeed achieved super evolution when he was young and was proficient in all kinds of ancient martial arts fist techniques. It was enough to cause a sensation as long as part of this news was verified. The inheritance of Guangchengzi? This was too shocking and triggered a heated discussion among the people. Some people in the Mu family had ugly expressions on their faces. This kind of news had pushed them to the heart of the struggle. Even if they stood out to explain, it would be useless. Following that, someone said that the Preaching Research Institute was akin to a depository of scriptures. This corporation had many ancient books containing astonishing breathing techniques. No way is the Preaching Research Institute that powerful. Of course. Don't you guys know that the Preaching Research Institute has excavated countless great tombs and hundreds of ancient imperial mausoleums? The things they have obtained are beyond your imagination. Naturally, there are top-notch breathing techniques among them. That's right. I remember now. Wasn't there a report a few years ago that the Preaching Research Institute had even excavated the tombs of Qi Songzi and Jiangxia? Rumor has it that they were both ancient immortals. This rumor caused many people to gasp in admiration. Many people were incomparably yearning. That's nothing. The Preaching Research Institute had even gone to the bottom of the sea to try and excavate the legendary Dragon Palace. Someone even added fuel to the fire. Many people were dazzled by this news and were incomparably yearning. Within the Preaching Research Institute, some of the important characters wore solemn expressions. This kind of rumor was too hateful. It was tantamount to roasting them over a fire. The matter wasn't over yet. Bodhi biogenetics was also dragged into the water. Bodhi biogenetics has a Buddha breathing technique. This rumor shook the world as soon as it was released. Everyone knew that this major corporation had a Buddha descendant who was suspected to have obtained the Buddha's inheritance. When the corresponding rumor appeared, people quickly believed it. Who did this? Jiang Luoshan's beautiful face was filled with black lines. They had actually fallen for the same trick. At this point, all kinds of discussions regarding breathing techniques were brought to the surface. It aroused people's enthusiasm as they speculated whether those kings had breathing techniques on them. Chu Feng put down the communicator and officially called it a day. He was only dragging the 3 families into the water to share the damage. Chu Feng was worried that someone would use the public opinion to pressure him into publicizing his breathing technique. Now, if anyone was envious, they could come at him. If they wanted to fight bare-chested, he would accompany them to the end. Schiller has been killed by Chu Feng. This news caused an earth-shattering uproar as soon as it was released. Everyone's attention was once again focused on Chu Feng. After Schiller's death, Chu Feng and the others had kept it a secret. They were not in a hurry to inform the outside world in order to avoid attracting suspicion and affecting their attack on Mount Longhu. Now, someone had revealed that Schiller had been killed by Chu Feng. This was an explosive piece of news. Chu Feng immediately asked Xiong Kuan, Ouyang Qing, and the others. They repeatedly said that no information had been leaked. They had no idea how the outside world had found out. Oh God, Immortal Chu is too powerful. He actually killed Schiller. It seems he really does have a peerless breathing technique on him. This is too shocking. Could it be that the influence of the breathing technique is so great? It allows Demon King Chu to transcend realms and contend against peerless experts with 6 severed shackles. Everyone was boiling over. Chu Feng's expression darkened. As expected, there were people who had their eyes on him. He had only just resolved the situation slightly and had just dragged others into the water when someone had already made such a fierce move. This time, he had become the center of attention. It was impossible for him not to attract attention, even if he didn't want to. Previously, killing the Golden Lion King and the Western Dragon was still acceptable. But this time, killing a peerless expert was simply too shocking. Lu Tong immediately contacted Chu Feng to understand the situation. He then helped him refute the rumors, saying that there was a hidden reason behind Schiller's death, and that it was the result of many parties working together. However, the news of Chu Feng killing Schiller had still spread, causing an uproar in the Western world. That Demon King Chu from the East actually killed Schiller. Oh, the Eastern Punitive Expedition's gourmet rankings was also created by him. There's already proof. He's indeed powerful. Now, all kinds of news had spread out. All the halos had landed on Chu Feng's body. Be it the West or the East, everyone was discussing this matter. Chu Feng's popularity soared, and he received all kinds of praises. However, everything about him was being magnified. All kinds of secrets were being unraveled, and in the end, everyone pointed to the fact that he possessed a peerless breathing technique. Killing by flattery, attracting hatred, setting up a target. This series of events caused Chu Feng's expression to turn gloomy. Chu Feng is at Mount Longhu. He's about to conquer the entire mountain and occupy the ancestral court of Taoism. This news shocked everyone. Someone was laughing in a resplendent living room. He was very young, dressed in white, and extremely handsome. He was sitting on a sofa, holding a goblet of wine in his hand. He gently swirled it, filling the air with the aroma of wine. He was calm and composed. A mocking smile appeared on his face as he said, "The person who released the news is definitely not strong enough. Otherwise, things wouldn't have turned out this way. But it's quite interesting. That Chu Feng will probably be badly battered. He might even suffer a setback in the end." Opposite him was a young man so handsome that it was almost devilish. Many women would feel ashamed of their inferiority. Moreover, on this person's forehead, there was actually a vertical eye. It was tightly shut, adding to a strange sense of beauty. His voice was magnetic as he said, "You also want to join in?" "Yes, I do suspect that he has an amazing breathing technique on him. There's no harm in adding fuel to the fire." The white-robed man smiled. He had a scholarly temperament and added, "In this world, strength speaks louder than words. Let's not touch him for now and use him to scout the way. Let him attack Mount Longhu." The handsome man with the demonic aura opened his vertical eye, and a divine light flowed within it. He said, "You might not be his match. Even if you train the 12 true forms of the Xingyi fist into the 10 forms, it will still be difficult for you to block his fist imprints. Friend of the marine race, I've already trained all 12 true forms and mastered the supreme breathing technique," the white-robed man corrected. "So it's like that. Let's have a pleasant cooperation." The three-eyed man raised his cup. "I hope Chu Feng is under pressure and wants to improve himself as quickly as possible. He will seize the time to attack Mount Longhu and scout the way for us." The white-robed man took a sip of wine and said with a smile, "What if he leaves and no longer attacks Mount Longhu?" The three-eyed man asked. "Then please finish him off," the white-robed man said. "Are you not going to spar with him?" the three-eyed man asked. The white-robed man shook his head and said with a mocking smile, "I can't be bothered to fight him. There's no point in competing with him. Since you have a great killing weapon, just cripple him and interrogate him to obtain his breathing technique." In the following days, Chu Feng and the two oxen tried all sorts of methods to ascend Mount Longhu. However, they all failed and even sustained injuries. At this time, the whole world was talking about his supreme breathing technique. Chu Feng felt the pressure. He wanted to improve himself. As long as he was strong enough, he could destroy all kinds of evil schemes and evil spirits, following which a dozen or so groups of people arrived from Mount Longhu. There were beast kings and even some major corporations. After meeting up with Chu Feng, they wanted to join forces to take down Mount Longhu. The rumors outside are obviously malicious. It's quite despicable to push Brother Chu into the heart of the struggle. Don't worry, we're not 3-year-olds. This kind of provocation is meaningless. These people were quite direct. After arriving, they made their intentions clear. They wanted to pull Chu Feng along with them to attack Mount Longhu and take down the ancestral court of Taoism. Yellow Cattle and the Black Yak had been studying the Heavenly Master's demon subduing technique and the lightning rune. However, they didn't think it was the so-called key to enter the mountain. They thought Chu Feng was too much. Chu Feng had indeed joined forces with those people and climbed the mountain several times. In the end, they were all injured by the essence flames of extreme yang and magnetic rays. This place was almost unsolvable. "Forget it. Let's call it a day." Chu Feng discussed with the two oxen. They indeed didn't have the strength to climb the mountain at the moment. This place was too dangerous. When Chu Feng told the Beast Kings and the major corporations about this, they felt regretful but had no other choice. Chapter 231. An aircraft with soft lines and a flat shape exuded a silver radiance. It was traveling at supersonic speeds as it approached from the horizon. Chu Feng, the Black Yak, and the others were just about to leave when they saw this scene. They were immediately dumbfounded. A flying saucer had appeared out of nowhere. The others were also shaken. Was this the result of an extraterrestrial civilization? "Hey, are the people from the Extraterrestrial Research Institute here? Didn't you guys excavate a flying saucer? Is this one of those things?" Someone shouted. The Extraterrestrial Research Institute was also a famous corporation. They were on the same level as the Preaching Research Institute, the Archaic Alliance, and the Celestial Biology Institute. Just as everyone was bewildered, the flying saucer flew through the air and circled around the mountainous region, spying on Mount Longhu. Are the extraterrestrials attacking Mount Longhu? Some people were doubtful. Everyone was speechless. What was going on? An extraterrestrial civilization had actually appeared. The appearance of a flying saucer here was definitely big news. However, just as everyone was apprehensive, the silver-gray flying saucer suddenly shot out a beam of terrifying energy towards Chu Feng. Chu Feng's hair stood on end. His king-level divine instinct had long since warned him. He quickly dodged to the side as a black hole appeared where he had been standing. Chi! 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 Beam after beam of light descended, and all of them shot towards Chu Feng. It was like a divine rainbow that shocked the heavens, sharp and terrifying. Everyone present felt their hair stand on end after seeing this. That kind of power was extremely powerful. Even a king-level entity would suffer a grievance if struck. Where did this flying saucer come from? It's actually launching a targeted attack. The black yak cried out oddly. This was too strange. It would have been fine if the major powers were attacking Chu Feng, but did the extraterrestrial civilization have a grudge against him? He picked up a large rock and hurled it at a terrifying speed. It disappeared into the sky like a rocket. However, this was completely useless. Although he possessed boundless strength and managed to hit the flying saucer, it was immediately crushed into powder by the radiance. It was too strange. A flying saucer had appeared out of nowhere. Chi! A beam of light flew towards the black yak. He was shocked out of his wits and quickly moved to the side to evade the attack. As expected, a black hole appeared on the ground. Someone was affected, struck by a beam of light, and turned into a bloody mist. That wave of energy was extremely shocking. Damn it. The people from the Archaic Alliance cursed. The ones who died were their people. Chu Feng was fleeing. Every time, he would be able to react in advance, which put him in a very passive position. In the end, he took out the thunderous bow and fired into the sky. This made the group of people petrified. The most primitive weapon, bow, an arrow, against the flying saucer. However, everyone couldn't help but admit that Chu Feng's bow and arrow were terrifyingly powerful. They carried the sounds of wind and thunder, and arcs of electricity curled around them as they tore through the heavens. The scene was astonishing. This arrow was not as powerful as Chu Feng's flying sword, but could attack from a distance. However, the way he shot the flying saucer still made people feel dizzy. It was too strange. Unfortunately, despite the power of the arrow, it was still struck by the beam of light shot out by the flying saucer. The two energies collided, releasing a dazzling light like fireworks. Up Mount Long, Yellow Cattle transmitted. At this time, Yellow Cattle and the Black Yak were also under attack. The flying saucer had locked onto the three of them. The others were occasionally attacked, but they weren't the main target. Swoosh! 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 The three rapidly ascended the mountain and charged into the woods. That was because Yellow Cattle knew how terrifying the energy field on the mountain was. Perhaps it could restrain the flying saucer. Originally, they were about to leave and no longer attack this place. Who would have thought they would encounter such an unforeseen event? They were actually attacked by the flying saucer. Damn it, did you guys feel it? It's purposely chasing us up the mountain and bombarding us indiscriminately. It's just like when I was chasing Schiller. Chu Feng keenly sensed that the flying saucer's attack speed had slowed down. It was as if it was chasing them up the mountain. This was very strange and not good at all. The owner of this flying saucer must have cooperated with a certain power on Earth. They recognize us and are deliberately targeting us, said the Black Yak. Being chased by a flying saucer made them feel that it was absurd, but it was the truth. Don't worry. The power of the field is worthy of reverence. Even a flying saucer can't resist it, Yellow Cattle said calmly. His only discomfort was that this place suppressed the beast race. Every time he ascended the mountain, his heart would palpitate and his chest would feel stuffy. Within a magnificent living room decorated with exquisite decorations, a white-robed, scholarly man was leaning on the sofa, leisurely flipping through a form-will fist scripture. Opposite him was a devilishly handsome, three-eyed man who was drinking tea. Who would have thought Chu Feng would retreat so quickly? He's only SOSO. How disappointing. I thought he could scout the way for us. The white-robed man put down the fist scripture and said, "The flying saucer left behind by Atlantis should be able to cripple him and bring him back." if not for the weapon system's problems and the severe internal damage of the flying saucer. Not to mention a mere demon King Chu. Even that old llama from Kunlun would be obliterated. What a pity, the three-eyed man said. He came from a sea, and the flying saucer belonged to him. At this moment, his subordinates were driving the flying saucer to chase after Chu Feng and the two oxen. On Mount Longhu, beams of light shot out one after the other as the flying saucer chased Chu Feng's group up the mountain. Swoosh! Under Yellow Cattle's instructions, they approached the ravine where the essence flames of extreme yang were hidden and disappeared into the woodland. The flying saucer seemed to have suffered an ineffable interference and momentarily lost track of the three. It circled in the air and would occasionally shoot down beams of light, causing the mountainous terrain to collapse. Chu Feng was astonished. He glanced at Yellow Cattle and asked, "There are flying saucers in your world?" He felt that Yellow Cattle was quite familiar with the flying saucer and knew how to deal with it. "No, but I've heard that some great worlds have brilliant technology but can be suppressed with formations," Yellow Cattle replied. Fields and formations were the same thing. In Yellow Cattle's world, all the major sects knew how to deploy a domain. It was an astonishing combination of offense and defense. Boom! The flying saucer bombarded madly, and finally, a few beams of light shot into the ravine. They struck the area where the essence flames of extreme yang were hidden and immediately provoked a disaster. Boom! An expanse of golden flames directly soared into the sky and engulfed the firmament. The scene was somewhat terrifying. It was like a golden mushroom cloud. It was exceptionally shocking. At the foot of the mountain, the people from all the major powers were shocked. Was this the energy rising from Mount Longhu? It was too astonishing. The golden essence flames of extreme yang surged and swept across the sky. Swoosh! The flying saucer reacted quickly and rushed up at top speed. However, the essence flame was extremely terrifying. It condensed into a golden cloud and chased after it. Boom! The flying saucer erupted with light, as if expressing its disdain towards this kind of energy. It retaliated by shooting out beam after beam of light, but it couldn't destroy the essence flame. In the end, it could only flee. The essence flames of extreme yang drifted down and gradually dispersed before disappearing. Chu Feng saw clearly that this Mount Longhu was truly terrifying. It could actually chase away the flying saucer. The flying saucer struck the source of the essence flame within the formation, causing the energy within the formation to fluctuate and counterattack, Yellow Cattle explained. Very soon, the flying saucer returned and still wanted to target Chu Feng's group. Boom! When it shot down a beam of light, it once again came into contact with the essence flames of extreme yang and caused a golden mushroom cloud to rise. The flying saucer escaped once again. Moreover, it seemed to have gained experience and wanted to see how extraordinary Mount Longhu was. When it returned, it began to bombard chaotically, and some beams of light directly flew towards the summit. I suspect that this isn't the so-called extraterrestrial civilization. It should be the humans on Earth controlling this flying saucer. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made such a low-level mistake, Yellow Cattle said. At this time, the flying saucer randomly bombarded the mountain. In particular, the summit was attacked by several beams of light, causing soil and rocks to fly everywhere. "Why do you say so?" Chu Feng asked. "It's already like this halfway up the mountain. It contains the essence flames of extreme yang and its terrifying field energy. I'm sure the formation at the summit will be even more terrifying," Yellow Cattle said. As expected, an earth-shattering scene took place as soon as he finished speaking. At this time, many people at the foot of the mountain were stunned. They were all dumbfounded and felt their scalps go numb. At the summit, two mushroom clouds, one silver and one gold, rose up. They were transforming violently into a gigantic dragon and tiger. They were entangled and directly swept towards the sky. Heavens, what are those things? A dragon and a tiger? Mount Longhu isn't just a random name. There really is a dragon and a tiger here. The dragon and tiger were simply too huge. They rose from the summit and expanded toward the sky. Their auras could devour the mountains and rivers, and the might they emitted would make even king-level experts tremble. Crack! In the sky, the silver-gray flying saucer actually couldn't escape and was imprisoned there. The dragon and tiger affected the space and rushed over, cutting the flying saucer in half. Boom! At the same time, Mount Longhu burst forth with incomparably dazzling radiance. Chu Feng spat out blood, but the yellow cattle and the black yak's condition was even worse. Their souls seemed to be suppressed, and the space between their eyebrows was cracking. They had suffered serious injuries. "Let's go. The beast's suppressing talisman has awakened." Yellow Cattle cried out. He looked at the dragon and tiger with a passionate gaze. He was somewhat reluctant, but also somewhat helpless. He urged Chu Feng and the black yak to run for their lives. In fact, he didn't need to urge them. The two of them had already moved and ran down the mountain. The power emitted by the dragon and tiger was simply too astonishing. The entire mountain was suffused with energy and had injured them. "What's that?" Chu Feng asked via telepathy as he ran madly. "There might be a weapon buried underground. That dragon and tiger are the energy released by it," Yellow Cattle said. He clearly informed them that it wasn't as simple as a formation. There was a terrifying weapon hidden within the famed mountains and great rivers. Just now, when Mount Longhu was under attack, it had automatically activated its might and cut the flying saucer in half. Chu Feng was astonished. A weapon had actually erupted with a mushroom cloud. It was as terrifying as a nuclear bomb. Moreover, the mushroom cloud had actually transformed into a dragon and tiger, corresponding to the name of Mount Longhu. In the distance, within a luxurious living room, the three-eyed marine race expert stood up with a leap. He stared at the electronic screen in his hand, with eyes almost popping out of their sockets. "My flying saucer!" he roared. That priceless flying saucer had been destroyed, just like that. It was cut in half and then fell onto Mount Longhu. He clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned blue. The screen in his hand shattered and emitted a cloud of green smoke. Chapter 232. Chu Feng and the others ran frantically down the mountain, breaking through the sound barrier and causing the air to explode. They smashed through the trees along the way, shattering them one after the other. In order to escape immediately, they disregarded everything else and pushed their speed to the limit. Sand and stones flew everywhere, and many millstone-sized rocks were sent flying into the air before exploding. Finally, they escaped down the mountain. Everyone at the foot of the mountain was astonished as they looked up at Mount Longhu. The whole mountain was glowing. It was as clear as colored glass with a sparkling luster. Be it the vegetation or the mountain rocks, everything became resplendent as a mist rose from it. A gigantic dragon and tiger formed from a mushroom cloud entangled themselves at the top of the mountain. Waves of dragon and tiger roars could be heard, intimidating everyone's soul. Chu Feng coughed up blood once again. He had finally escaped. It was too dangerous just now. The energy from a mountain had almost caused their bodies to explode. Beside him, some people revealed peculiar expressions. Just how badly was Chu Feng injured? How much combat strength did he have left? Many people were trying to estimate. Comparatively speaking, Chu Feng's injuries could be considered light. Yellow Cattle and the black yak weren't in good condition. They were suppressing the beast race and were bleeding from between their brows. Their spirits were dispirited and their faces were pale. This place was simply too bizarre. The whole of Mount Longhu was like a giant talisman about to suppress and kill the beast race. "Little brother Chu, are you all right?" An old man from the Archaic Alliance walked over and asked about his injuries. He then glanced at the two oxen. The others also came forward and observed him carefully. "Many thanks, everyone. These injuries are nothing," Chu Feng replied. "How can we do that?" "We'll help Brother Chu examine him. These two brothers are also badly injured. They need immediate treatment." These people were very enthusiastic. They brought out their newly developed medicines to treat Chu Feng and the two oxen. The black yak was apprehensive and didn't dare let them examine him. The old yak was very vigilant. He was worried that these corporations were plotting to find out the truth of their situation. The news in the outside world had spread like wildfire. It was said that Chu Feng possessed an unrivaled breathing technique. This caused some people to covet this inheritance. Chu Feng graciously took the medicine from the hands of some people and said, "Thank you, everyone." He wasn't too worried. Generally speaking, unless they really had the confidence to destroy him, which great power would dare to risk universal condemnation and attack him. At this time, the mountain was shaking and resplendent lights were emitting from it. Mount Longhu was releasing extremely dangerous energy fluctuations. What a pity! Mount Longhu is too dangerous and difficult to conquer. It is worthy of being the capital of Taoism. A few people sighed. They knew that they had failed again this time. There was no way to ascend a mountain. On the top of the mountain, the dragon and tiger once again turned into a mushroom cloud and finally disappeared into the mountain. After a long time, the place gradually returned to peace. The flying saucer shattered into pieces, emitting crackling sounds of electricity and sparks as it fell onto Mount Longhu. Creatures of the sea race? Chu Feng's eyes sharpened. Although he was still quite a distance away, he could already see a few creatures in the wreckage of the flying saucer. There was a seahorse, a sea snake, and a shark. Their life force was completely extinguished, bloody holes appearing between their brows. They were killed by the dragon and tiger that rose from the mountain, all of them losing their lives. The others also noticed and revealed astonished expressions. It was actually an expert from a sea and not an outer realm entity. "Brother Chu, be careful. The marine race is actually targeting you," a middle-aged man from the Extraterrestrial Research Institute warned. "The marine race is incomparably powerful. Reportedly, a dragoness from the Eastern Sea has arrived on land with a group of experts. Some people saw that she could almost fly through the air and was only stronger than experts with 6 severed shackles. Some people also saw a black flood dragon. It stirred up a torrential wave in the southern sea and finally came ashore. People from all the major powers spoke in succession." Chu Feng nodded. He was deeply surprised that marine creatures could actually control flying saucers. He thought of the legendary Atlantis. Although it had already sunk, there might be some descendants left behind. "Everyone, let's part ways here. We will take our leave," Chu Feng said as he prepared to leave. There was no point in staying here now that he couldn't ascend Mount Longhu. At the same time, he was on guard. He had been attacked by a flying saucer. This was a serious matter, and he didn't want to stay here any longer. He needed to make a proper plan. The group of people politely sent Chu Feng and the 2 oxen off. Yellow Ox was regretful. There was a mythical weapon buried beneath Mount Longhu. The energy it emitted was akin to a nuclear explosion, forming a mushroom cloud, which eventually transformed into a dragon and tiger. His delicate and pretty face was full of unwillingness, and there was a bloodstain between his brows. "How are you guys?" Chu Feng asked the 2 oxen after leaving Mount Longhu. "We need to rest for a period of time. It's best if we don't have to fight, but it's not a problem if we fight with our lives on the line," the black yak replied. The 2 oxen's brows were dripping with blood, and there were cracks on their foreheads. It could be said that they were in extreme danger just now. If they had been one step slower, they would have been in grave danger. The journey was smooth, and the 3 arrived at the nearest large city. Chu Feng watched as the 2 oxen boarded the plane and left. They had already agreed that Chu Feng would return to Shuntian to accompany his parents for a period of time before going to Mount Kunlun. In a certain place, within the spacious living room of a villa, all kinds of furniture, electrical appliances, and even tea sets were floating in the air as if they were floating in the sea. All of this was because of the man at the center of the living room. His body was suffused with a terrifying energy, causing all the objects to leave the ground. There was a vertical eye between his brows which, at this moment, was like a bolt of lightning as it opened and closed. He was very handsome, but at this moment, he was filled with a vicious aura. Chu Feng, a human with 4 severed shackles, has caused my flying saucer to be destroyed. What a pity! How hateful! He roared. With a loud bang, all the floating objects around him exploded. Not far away, a young man in white robe spoke. He was very handsome and had a scholarly air about him. He said, "It was indeed an accident. Mount Longhu is much more mysterious than we had imagined. As for that Chu Feng, we'll cripple him and force him to hand over his breathing technique. Then we'll kill him." The three-eyed man's hair danced in the wind. His demonic temperament was suffused with killing intent. The vertical eye between his brows was glowing with a faint red light. He gradually calmed down and said, "I can't wait any longer. Have someone capture him immediately. The Black Dragon Crown Prince of the Southern Sea is near Mount Longhu, right?" The white-robed man asked casually. "Hey Ting, are you still at Mount Longhu? Help me capture and kill a human." The three-eyed man spoke to someone. Within a cave 200 kilometers from Mount Longhu, a man was sitting cross-legged. His skin was bronze, his hair was black, and his eyes were like cold lightning. He was recuperating from a wound between his brows that was still dripping with blood. Additionally, his abdomen seemed to have been slashed by a sharp sword and had almost been severed. He was the Black Dragon Crown Prince of the Southern Sea. At this moment, he was holding a special communicator in his hand. It was different from the ones on land. It looked like a conch shell and was currently talking to someone. "Three-eyed, you actually came to me for help. I'm injured and almost died at Mount Longhu." "I'm still very weak," he replied. In the distance, the three-eyed man said coldly, "It's just a human with 4 severed shackles. It shouldn't be too difficult for you. Didn't you invite me to go to the depths of the ocean to fight for the draconification fruit? I'll go with you when the time comes. I'm not being perfunctory. I'm really injured. But since he's only 4 severed shackles, and you're the one who came to me, I naturally have to help." Hating nodded in agreement, following which the three-eyed man informed him that he needed to move out immediately. Otherwise, it would be too late. "Your flying saucer has been destroyed? What a pity. So many marine race experts are envious of it. Yet you were so careless and allowed it to fall on Mount Longhu." Hatung was regretful. He was very jealous of that flying saucer. Such flying machines could only be found in the ruins of the sea, but they were extremely rare. Only a few marine race experts had ever obtained one. Moments later, he revealed his true form. It was a giant black serpent hundreds of meters long with a diameter of 2 meters. It rose into the air like a heavenly dragon. Boom! The serpent whistled through the air, accompanied by violent gales. Its hundreds of meters long body pierced through the mountains at extreme speed. Every time it fell from the sky, it only needed to borrow the force of the mountain peaks to leap up again. It was a terrifying sight, accompanied by clouds of black mist and flying rocks. A distance of 100 kilometers was too short for the giant black serpent. As an expert with 6 severed shackles, it could reach 4 times the speed of sound. Now, what's that? A bolt of black lightning. Back on Mount Longhu, the various beast kings and corporations had yet to disperse. They wanted to see if there was a last chance. At this time, they saw the scene in the distance. There seemed to be a bolt of black lightning moving at extreme speed. A terrifying aura could be felt from afar. A giant serpent. Very soon, these people were shocked to find that it was a gigantic black serpent. It arrived at the base of Mount Longhu in the blink of an eye. Its head was dozens of meters above the ground as it looked down on everyone. "Which one of you is Chu Feng?" Hating asked. Its eyes were cold, and there was a horn on its head. Anyone who saw it would be shocked. Had it transformed into a flood dragon? It was no longer a pure snake. Everyone felt a wave of pressure. This black serpent was absolutely tyrannical. All the king-level entities at the scene tensed up and felt an abnormal sense of danger. Very soon, people guessed its identity. It was likely the Black Dragon Crown Prince of the Southern Sea. The corporations were well informed and had long since received news of the Black Dragon Crown Prince's arrival. "Chu Feng just left," someone said. "Very good." Hatung heard this and tore through the air with a swoosh. He broke through the sound barrier and disappeared 1,000 meters away. Something big is about to happen. The Black Dragon Crown Prince of the Southern Sea is going to cause trouble for Chu Feng. People realized that a shocking battle was about to break out. The ferocious marine race experts were going to attack Demon King Chu on the continent. This would definitely have far-reaching consequences. This was going to be an intense clash between the sea and the continent. Many people chased after He Tung to watch the battle, but their speed was a notch slower than his. Chu Feng had sent off the 2 oxen and was now waiting for his own flight. He was bored to death as he paced back and forth in the waiting hall. There were very few passengers at the airport at the moment. No one was willing to travel unless it was absolutely necessary. That was because the skies were often accompanied by ferocious birds of prey. It could be very dangerous. Chu Feng, come and fight. It was at this time that a thunderous voice arrived from a distance. Moreover, many people in the airport were crying out in alarm and running for their lives. Chu Feng had long since sensed it. He turned back, and his eyes erupted with divine light as he saw a large serpent slowly approaching. It had flipped over a plane and arrived at the airport. This black serpent was dozens of meters tall when it stood upright. Its entire body was jet black like a demon, and its scales seemed to be made of cold metal. With a swoosh, Chu Feng went to meet the serpent. He didn't want ordinary people to suffer because of him. Let's go and fight in the distant mountains. Chu Feng was very direct. He had sensed the other party's killing intent and didn't waste words. If they wanted to fight, then let's fight. Thump! The black serpent raised its tail and lashed out at Chu Feng. He quickly dodged to the side as the concrete floor of the airport was blasted open. Chapter 233. At this point, the black serpent opened its bloody maw and spat out a wave of inky black flames. It covered the sky and covered the earth in an attempt to kill Chu Feng. With a swoosh, Chu Feng evaded the attack and moved 400 meters to the side. The concrete where he had just been standing had been corroded beyond recognition. The ground had caved in as if a large amount of matter had disappeared out of thin air. This scene was somewhat terrifying. It was as if an annihilation had taken place. Chu Feng was shocked. This black serpent was indeed terrifying. The flames it spat out were extremely poisonous and corrosive. Even king-level entities would be in danger if they came into contact with it. With a buzzing sound, the void trembled. The black serpent moved as fast as lightning and pounced towards Chu Feng. Its body was like a black mountain pressing down on him. Boom! Chu Feng punched out, blasting forward. A black yak appeared along with the explosive power of his fist. With the sun, moon, and stars above its head, it roared and charged towards the black serpent. Boom! The entire area shook violently. The black serpent's body swayed, its eyes cold and sinister. It was astonished that this human was able to block its gigantic body with a single punch. Although he was sent flying again, it was still an astonishing feat. Although it was heavily injured and could only unleash a portion of its power, it was still an extraordinary feat for a human with 4 severed shackles to be able to do this. Chu Feng flipped through the air and landed in the distance, staring at the serpent. He relaxed a little. The serpent was wounded. The wound on its abdomen had been corroded by a mysterious power and had yet to heal. Blood was still seeping out. It was obvious that the wound was extremely terrifying. It had almost cut the serpent in two. Chu Feng knew clearly how this wound had come about. A few days ago, when they had just arrived at Mount Longhu, they had encountered this serpent escaping from the back of the mountain. He observed carefully and found that there was also blood flowing from the serpent's forehead. There was also a shocking crack. Chu Feng immediately knew that this was the same injury as the black yak and yellow cattle. It was caused by the suppression of Mount Longhu. South Sea Dragon Crown Prince. Chu Feng spoke, confirming his identity. Back at Mount Longhu, Linoy had said that this giant black snake might have come from the Southern Sea and was a prince of the dragon clan in that region. You're quite knowledgeable, the black snake said coldly. I don't have any dealings with you. Why did you come to kill me? Chu Feng asked. He wanted to know the truth. At the same time, he was trying to buy time for those who were running away in panic. Originally, he wanted to lure the snake away, but he didn't expect the black snake to be so self-centered that it directly attacked here. Run! How could there be such a huge snake in this world? In the airport, many people ran and lost their shoes. Quite a few people even fell to the ground. They were extremely terrified. When had they ever encountered such a thing? A large black snake overturned the plane and destroyed the runway. It was truly terrifying. Because of you, my good friend's flying saucer crashed on Mount Longhu. He invited me to kill you. The Black Dragon Crown Prince stared at Chu Feng. Chu Feng was furious. The flying saucer had attacked him for no reason, forcing him and the two oxen to flee to Mount Longhu. In the end, the yellow cattle and the black yak were badly injured and had no choice but to return to Mount Kunlun. He hadn't even erupted yet, but the owner of the flying saucer had invited someone to kill him and settle accounts with him. What kind of logic was this? It was brutal and unreasonable. Who invited you? Does anyone die? After being enraged, Chu Feng no longer cared about the marine race expert or the Dragon Crown Prince. He wanted to kill He Tong first and then settle accounts with the owner. This time he was too angry. After being attacked for no reason, he was now being attacked. Did they really think he was a soft persimmon that could be squeezed at will? Who do you think you are? How dare you yell in front of me? The black serpent's eyes were cold. It didn't say who had invited it because it disdained to answer. As it saw it, it had only come here to give face to the three-eyed race expert and help him kill a human. It was a simple matter and couldn't tolerate this human's rudeness. Aren't you just a sea serpent? What are you pretending for? Chu Feng was furious and naturally wouldn't say anything. He Ting looked at him coldly. At present, it could be considered a flood dragon with an exceptionally powerful bloodline. There weren't many races in this world that could compare to it. Boom! The next moment, it moved. Its gigantic serpent body came crashing down like a black mountain peak, accompanied by boundless pressure and black mist. It was a terrifying scene. Chu Feng dodged to the side. Such a huge snake smashing towards him was truly frightening. With a bang, the concrete floor of the airport was blasted apart. The entire area was filled with rubble, and many large black cracks appeared on the ground. Moreover, a number of airplanes in the distance were sent flying. Rumble. At the same time, the black serpent gave chase. Its serpentine body danced about like a black mountain ridge, almost burying Chu Feng beneath it. Chu Feng dodged with great agility. Even though he wasn't a creature with 6 severed shackles, his speed was still extremely fast, even surpassing that of this serpent. He Ting's eyes were cold and filled with surprise. It had pounced several times to no avail. It once again opened its bloody maw and spat out black flames. Black Dragon Crown Prince of the Southern Sea, do you have any sense of civility? Chu Feng rebuked the serpent as he evaded. The black serpent looked down at Chu Feng. It was somewhat puzzled and surprised, not knowing why this human would say such things. Didn't your parents teach you not to spit everywhere? Chu Feng said from hundreds of meters away. He Tang's eyes became even colder. No one had ever dared to ridicule it like this. This human was too bold. With a boom, it stood up on its hind legs and all its scales opened up. An astonishing scene occurred. Its entire body was glowing with black light, which converged on the horn on its head. Then, it shot out beam after beam of light towards Chu Feng. That horn was fairly terrifying. It continuously shot out beams of black light like sword radiance. Chu Feng was astonished. He quickly evaded and shot out his flying knife, which transformed into a scarlet beam of light and slashed forward. Clang! 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 The scarlet flying knife collided with the serpent's horn, producing an ear-splitting sound and sending sparks flying in all directions. Chu Feng was sure that this serpent was gravely injured. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to clash head-on like this. That was because an entity with 6 severed shackles possessed terrifying strength. Roar! The black serpent let out a loud roar. It felt that it was losing face after failing to take down a human of such a low realm. It was forcefully activating even more power, but it was extremely strenuous. That was because its injuries were too severe and it could hardly muster its usual terrifying strength. Thump! Like a divine dragon swinging its tail, the black serpent's body swept over and swept away everything in its path. Sand and stones were sent flying everywhere. 2 airplanes were even swept away and immediately exploded. Chu Feng leapt into the air and evaded this attack. He was hesitating whether or not he should use the diamond chakram. Perhaps he could kill the serpent in one blow, or perhaps he would miss. This place was too spacious and suitable for the serpent to move about and hide. It might be easier if they were in a narrow valley. Forget it, let's fight. With a boom, Chu Feng shot out the diamond chakram. At the same time, he leapt into the air. He struck out with all his might, aiming straight for the serpent's head. He firmly believed that if he could land a direct hit, it would probably split open the serpent's head. Even an entity with 6 severed shackles might not be able to withstand such an attack. The diamond chakram was too resplendent. It was like a falling sun, a terrifying scene accompanied by torrential radiance. Although He Tong had seen it, the distance was too close. Moreover, its body was too large to evade. However, it was, after all, an entity with 6 severed shackles. Even though its body was injured, it wasn't something an ordinary king could compare to. With a roar like that of a dragon, its body erupted with black light as its head descended at an inconceivable speed. At such a close distance, any other king-level expert wouldn't be able to react at all. However, the black serpent had managed to avoid being hit in its vitals. Clang! The diamond chakram smashed right into that black horn, causing a brilliant explosion of black light to erupt. The scene was somewhat astonishing. The serpent's body swayed violently before collapsing. This attack was simply too terrifying. It was shaken so much that it felt dizzy and in great pain. Boom! The next moment, it raised its head and stood up, completely enraged. One could see that its horn had been damaged somewhat. There were actually some cracks on it. It had actually been injured by the diamond chakram. Especially at the base of its horn, there were traces of blood near its head. That was the result of the impact, and even its flesh had been torn open. Chu Feng was like a great rock spreading its wings. He directly soared into the air and pounced towards the serpent's body, not even bothering to pick up the diamond chakram. Thump! He activated his divine feet, and the power in his legs was extraordinary. He stomped on the serpent's body and ran all the way up. It was as if he was constantly kicking at the serpent's body. Under normal circumstances, the divine feat would be enough to shatter a small mountain peak. However, when he was stomping on the serpent's body, he didn't manage to break it. He only managed to open up the wounds it had received on Mount Longhu, causing it to bleed profusely. The black serpent was furious. It turned around abruptly and opened its mouth, spewing out brilliant multicolored light. The scene was extremely astonishing. With a swoosh, Chu Feng leapt up once again and landed on its back. He shouted, "Aren't you a dragon? Today, I'm a dragon knight." After charging onto the serpent's back, he ferociously punched out, erupting with incomparable power. He blasted towards the serpent, hoping to pierce through it. Boom! At this moment, a terrifying aura pervaded the air. The serpent's scales were glowing as black flames soared from its body. It was suffused with the aura of a peerless expert. Puffed! Chu Feng coughed up blood and was finally sent flying. He used his extreme speed to rush into the distance to pick up the diamond chakram. He was somewhat apprehensive. This serpent had forcefully exerted the power of a severed shackle expert. It was indeed terrifying. It had injured him in an instant. Rumble! The serpent was truly furious. A human with 4 severed shackles had caused it to suffer such a great loss. It was simply unbearable. From a certain distance, Chu Feng used his spiritual energy to draw the diamond chakram into his hand. He turned back to look and saw that the serpent was glowing with a terrifying black light. He felt that if he were to use the diamond chakram again, it would probably fail. He ran madly into the distance, causing the concrete ground of the airport to collapse. His strength was simply too great. He immediately raised his speed to the limit, reaching 4.5 times the speed of sound. The serpent's single horn was damaged, and its eyes were as cold as a blade. Its gigantic serpent body crushed the concrete ground, causing it to crumble. It was as if the heavens were falling and the earth was splitting apart. In its fury, it unleashed its greatest power. Its body was indestructible and destroyed everything it came into contact with. Boom! During this process, a few more planes were swept by it, exploding here and surging with flames. At this time, the Beast Kings and corporate experts from Mount Longhu arrived just in time to witness this scene. They were all shocked. Chu Feng is being chased by the Black Dragon Crown Prince of the Southern Sea. This piece of news was spread out immediately, accompanied by a photo. The outside world was in an uproar. Had Chu Feng clashed with the Southern Sea Dragon race? Before long, Chu Feng charged into the mountains. He was looking for an advantageous position and was prepared to use the diamond chakram to attack the serpent. This place was no longer spacious, and it would be difficult for the serpent to evade. However, the Black Dragon Crown Prince had transformed into his human form after arriving here. He was no longer in his serpent form. Apparently, he was somewhat apprehensive of the diamond chakram. Black light flickered as black scales transformed into combat clothes that covered his bronze-colored body. His long hair was scattered behind him, and his eyes were cold. Chu Feng was shaken. As expected of an expert with 6 severed shackles, he could even transform clothes in such a manner. Black Serpent's forehead was dripping with blood. At the same time, there was a terrifying wound on his abdomen that had almost torn his body into two. This was an injury he had received on Mount Longhu. Chu Feng discovered that the wound on his abdomen had been torn open and his body was about to be torn apart. Chu Feng guessed that this was the result of the serpent forcefully activating its greatest power just now. It had suffered grave injuries in the past and could no longer bear the burden of such energy. "You dare chase after me in such a state?" Chu Feng smiled. "It's enough to kill you," Black Serpent said coldly. With a swoosh, he leapt hundreds of meters away and arrived before Chu Feng. "It just so happens that I'm lacking a beast of transportation. You're the one," Chu Feng said in a provocative manner, hoping to infuriate this terrifying serpent. Boom! A great battle erupted. Chu Feng did not run away because he believed that Black Serpent would not dare to use his greatest power carelessly. Otherwise, his body would be torn into two. What's going on? Has Chu Feng stopped running and is fighting the dragon race? Rumor has it that the Black Dragon Crown Prince has long since severed his 6th shackle. Now, Chu Feng is actually able to contend with him. Could it be that he really has a peerless breathing technique? Behind them, some beast kings and corporate powers had arrived. They were all shocked. Someone sent this news to the outside world with a photo attached. The news immediately caused an uproar on the internet. Chu Feng was actually not at a disadvantage in his battle with the Black Dragon Crown Prince. It was an extremely intense battle. As more and more people came to know of this, the outside world boiled over. Will your friend, the Black Dragon Crown Prince, fail miserably? The white-robed man inquired. He had seen the latest news on the internet and was deeply astonished. Chapter 234. In his human form, He Tang's aura flourished even more. His energy hadn't weakened in the slightest. His body was sturdy, and his black hair draped over his shoulders. His pupils were emitting cold lightning, making him look like a demonic god. Roar! At this time, he let out a loud roar. All the pores on his body opened up and gushed with black light, forming a terrifying domain that caused the mountains to shake violently. Around him, one tree after another actually uprooted from the ground, rushing into the air along with the soil. There were also rocks weighing up to 1,000 caddies. One by one, all of them floated up into the air. This was an astonishing momentum. As he mobilized the mysterious energy within his body, it affected everything in the surroundings. The trees exploded, and the boulders left the ground to revolve around him. Kill! With a loud roar, he pounced forward like a bolt of black lightning. His right hand spread open and emitted a metallic luster that enveloped Chu Feng's head. This was like an invincible dragon claw. It surpassed the speed of sound and caused the air to explode, sending sand and stones flying everywhere. It was a terrifying scene. Chu Feng stretched out his limbs. His skin was sparkling as he went all out to resist the southern sea flood serpent. His fist erupted with dazzling radiance as he met the enemy head-on. Thump! Fist and claw collided. White light and black light blossomed at the same time. It was like a collision between black and white worlds, interweaving with terrifying energy fluctuations. With a loud boom, the entire area emitted an astonishing explosion. The ground was torn apart and crisscrossed with numerous black cracks, each one several meters wide. One could easily imagine how frightening their destructive power was. The two rapidly moved about and fought fiercely. Only their silhouettes could be seen amidst the dazzling radiance. It was like two demonic gods colliding. Swoosh! After hundreds of collisions, the two separated at lightning speed and retreated 100 meters away to face each other in the mountainous region. There were some bloody marks on Chu Feng's fist from the dragon claw, but they weren't serious. Only a few traces of blood had seeped out. He Tang's spread fingers were stained with blood, some from Chu Feng and some from himself. Even someone as powerful as the flood serpent had been injured in this life and death struggle. The ground was a mess. Scattered leaves and dead branches were everywhere. The ground looked like it had been hit by a meteorite. There was a huge crater with dense cracks. In the distance, the spectators were shocked to see this scene. Chu Feng wasn't at a disadvantage against the Black Dragon Crown Prince. One had to know that this was a dragon with 6 severed shackles. Divine light flickered in the depths of these people's eyes. They recalled the rumors in the outside world that Chu Feng had grasped an unrivaled breathing technique. Their eyes were burning with desire. He Tang was tall, slender, and well-built. He had a tan complexion and a sparkling luster, giving off a shocking feeling of power. He stared at Chu Feng, and 2 beams of light shot out from his eyes. His entire body gradually emitted dragon might, and in a trance, a black flood dragon phantom appeared behind him. At this moment, even the king-level entities felt a wave of terror. They couldn't help but submit to He Tang. This was the suppression of their bloodline. Chu Feng let out a cold snort. After the probing just now, he had confirmed that He Tang wouldn't dare use the power of his 6 severed shackles. His wounded body wouldn't be able to withstand it. His body tensed up, his eyes sharp, and his spirit highly focused. He was prepared to fight to the death with this black flood serpent. Your tenacity has exceeded my expectations. He Tang spoke. His eyes were full of aggression as he sized up Chu Feng, wanting to see through him. Boom! The next moment, he moved. The void seemed to explode with a deafening sound as he traversed hundreds of meters and arrived in front of Chu Feng as though he were flying. During this process, the trees were blasted apart, the vegetation was pulverized, and the rocks in his way were blasted apart. He was like an unstoppable dragon in human form. He Tang's speed was simply too fast. He used his most violent attacks in hopes of ending the battle as soon as possible. Boom! Chu Feng also moved. He was as fast as lightning, and his whole body blossomed with blazing multicolored light. He mobilized all the energy in his body and did his utmost without holding anything back. At the same time, he used his most proficient fist technique, the Demon Ox Fist. It was incomparably violent and carried with it the sound of thunder. It was as though lightning had fallen from the 9 heavens. Within the mountainous region, the terrifying sound of thunder caused the giant trees and boulders around Chu Feng to collapse. He was like an unstoppable god of war, sweeping through everything before him. Thump! The two clashed once again, destroying the entire area beyond recognition. The mountainous region was shattered, and the earth and pebbles turned into waves that carried the giant trees hundreds of meters into the air. This didn't seem like a mountainous region, but rather a vast ocean. The earth was heaving up and down violently, shooting up into the sky like raging waves beating against the shore. The two bodies were extremely tyrannical. They smashed through boulders weighing tens of thousands of kilograms and split apart the verdant mountainous region. They moved with extreme speed like two bolts of lightning tangling together. Both of them struck out at the same time, wanting to finish each other off as soon as possible. Chi. Scarlet multicolored light blossomed as Chu Feng shot out his flying knife. At such a close distance, he directly slashed at He Teng's body, leaving behind a terrifying wound on the side of his neck. Unfortunately, he couldn't decapitate He Teng even though he was caught off guard. He Teng had avoided a vital point. At almost the same time, a bloody wound appeared on Chu Feng's cheek. His shoulder had also been struck by a beam of black light and was drenched in blood. This was caused by the horn hidden in He Teng's hair. The black light was as sharp as a sword, and one of them almost pierced through Chu Feng's head. Clang, 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 clang. Chu Feng used his spiritual arts to control the flying knife. It flew up and down like a scarlet flood dragon, enveloping He Teng's head and blocking the black horn. The two were also fighting fiercely with their physical bodies. Divine light erupted from Chu Feng's eyes. At such a close distance, this was a rare opportunity. Lightning runes interweaved on his left palm in an incomparably resplendent manner. Boom! Massive thunderbolts burst forth, illuminating the entire mountainous region. This was lightning that was impossible to defend against. Chu Feng had been waiting for this opportunity all along. He opened up his left palm and blasted at He Teng's abdomen with incomparably violent lightning. He had already wanted to use the Heavenly Master Demon's subduing art back at the airport, but he had held back because it was too difficult to reach the other party's wound. Now that this was a rare opportunity, he went all out. Lightning shot out from his palm like a blazing sun. He Teng's expression changed. The most serious injury on his body was his abdomen, which had almost been cut in two back at Mount Longhu. It was still dripping with blood and had yet to heal. He stretched out a hand to shake off Chu Feng's left hand, but the lightning had long since touched his body. It was simply too sudden. Puffed. Blood sprayed out as the lightning erupted and pierced through He Teng's abdomen. His expression immediately changed. This attack was too serious and almost broke him in half. Ah! He screamed miserably as his black hair danced wildly in the wind. At the same time, his entire body erupted with black light as black scales appeared and shot out. All of them were as sharp as flying daggers and possessed astonishing killing intent. Chu Feng's expression changed. He rapidly shifted his body to the side in an effort to evade. At the same time, he brandished his fists and released lightning. However, it was too late. The distance was too close for him to evade all of them. Puffed, puffed, puffed. His shoulders, abdomen, and thighs were all gushing with blood as the shockingly sharp black scales pierced through his body. Both of them were sent flying, and both of them were severely injured. Thump! Chu Feng crashed into a cliff on the side of the mountain, causing the cliff to crack into pieces. His body was covered in blood as he slid down the cliff. There were at least 6 or 7 bloody holes on his body, all of them caused by the black scales. He Teng was in an even worse state. He was sent flying and smashed into the mountainous terrain. Blood gushed out from his abdomen, and the upper half of his body was almost torn off. His injuries had never healed since the incident on Mount Longhu. There was a mysterious energy entangling him there, and it was difficult to remove it in a short period of time. 2 beams of black light shot out from his eyes as he stared at Chu Feng with extreme hatred. He had almost been cut in half at the waist by that sudden flash of lightning. Chu Feng stood up covered in blood, but he was still laughing. The lightning attack this time was very effective. It had caused He Teng's injuries to worsen and weaken him even further. He wanted to attack again with the diamond chakram in his hand, but he knew it would be too difficult. The other party was too vigilant and wouldn't underestimate him. In the distance, the experts from the major corporations and the Beast Kings were all deeply astonished. Their eyes were burning with passion. Although the outside world was saying that Chu Feng had killed Schiller, Lu Tong of the Hollow Jade Temple had already helped him refute the rumors. It was the result of a joint attack. Ordinary people didn't investigate too deeply, but the various kings believed Lu Tong's words. That was because, under normal circumstances, experts with 4 severed shackles were far from being Schiller's match. But now, Chu Feng's power was clear for all to see. He had actually caused the Black Dragon Crown Prince to suffer a great loss and was almost cut in half at the waist. This was truly shocking. Do you really have a miraculous breathing technique? Heitong's eyes were cold as he stared at Chu Feng with a fervent gaze. Even though he was heavily injured, he still felt a certain thirst. As he saw it, no matter how serious his injuries were, a human with 4 severed shackles was far from being able to contend against him. The Flood Dragon bloodline was astonishing. Who could contend against him? In terms of physical strength alone, he could easily crush all the king-level experts. But from the exchange, just now, it seemed that the other party's physical body was shockingly durable. He didn't fear him at all. These words caused the nearby king-level experts to become even more envious. Chi! Black scales appeared one after another around Heitong, numbering in the hundreds. All of them flickered with a dark golden radiance, cold and threatening. He wanted to kill Chu Feng and not give him any more chances. However, Heitong was also feeling a bit of heartache. These scales would fuse with his energy and eventually be destroyed. If he were to expend them without restraint, some parts of his body would become bare and lose their most effective defenses. Chu Feng tossed out his flying knife and raised his left hand, preparing to use lightning and the flying knife to protect himself. At the same time, he quietly produced a seed and held it in his palm, ready to use it to attack. This seed was sparkling and translucent like a white bottle. There were golden specks and green veined patterns on its surface. It was like a twinkling star and appeared quite mysterious. It was only 2 inches long. Although he had long since tested its power, this was the first time Chu Feng had used this seed against an enemy. "I'll kill you," Heitong shouted. He used his spiritual energy to control the hundreds of black scales which rained down on Chu Feng like a black meteor shower. Each of the flood serpent's scales flickered with a cold light and broke through the sound barrier. Like a shower of lightning, they caused the void to explode with terrifying might. "Kill!" Chu Feng also let out a loud roar. It was only a single word, but his battle intent was at its peak. He activated the great Tao treasured Aquarius with all his might and attacked fiercely. Boom! After injecting his physical energy into the Aquarius seed and activating it with his spiritual energy, the scene became quite terrifying. The mouth of the Aquarius spewed out one beam after another of sword radiance after another. It was as though a sword formation was resonating with it. At the same time, there was the sound of thunder. The whole area was drowned out by the crisscrossing sword radiance. The great Tao treasured Aquarius was fairly terrifying. It had combined Chu Feng's physical and spiritual energy to display its might. It was hard to imagine that this was just a seed. Clang, 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 clang. Waves of sword radiance flew out from the Aquarius and knocked away the incoming black scales. Its power was terrifying and surging with killing intent. Heitong was struck by the sword radiance and suffered many wounds on his body. Some of them had even been pierced through. He was drenched in blood, and his hair was disheveled as he retreated rapidly. In the distance, all the kings were alarmed. The Black Dragon Crown Prince was actually being suppressed. Someone sent a message to the outside, accompanied by a photo revealing the situation of the battle here. Chu Feng isn't at a disadvantage against the Black Dragon Crown Prince. It's very likely that Demon King Chu will defeat the Southern Sea Dragon race experts. This caused great waves. The white-robed man who had been paying close attention to the battle was still calm and refined after learning of the situation. He glanced at the marine race expert beside him and said, "Your friend's injuries are too serious. Will there be any accidents?" Chapter 235. The 2-inch bottle spewed out sword energy continuously, cleaving apart boulders and cutting down giant trees. Even someone as strong as Hatung was sent tumbling away with several bloody holes on his body. The Black Dragon Crown Prince felt extremely sullen. As an expert with 6 severed shackles, he was unable to bring out his true strength and was thus wounded. Boom! The mountain ground exploded as the great Dao bottle displayed its might. Under Chu Feng's control, the beams of energy it spat out became even more resplendent, shattering boulders and sending leaves flying in all directions. Hatung retreated rapidly. With a roar, more black scales appeared around him and spun about amidst a profound black glow. Finally, they attacked together. He had no choice but to produce his scales once again. If he had a choice, he definitely wouldn't do this because these scales would be directly consumed and would eventually explode. As a flood serpent, it would be a joke if its scales were sparse and its body was bare. It would need to evolve again in order to recover. He would need to wait until he severed his 7th shackle before he could grow a full set of scales. Buzz! The void trembled as the scales whistled through the air at supersonic speeds. The sound of explosions was astonishing. The entire area was filled with boundless killing intent. The flood serpent's scales danced about in the air. They were sharp, resplendent, and unstoppable. Chu Feng was incomparably solemn as he activated the seed with all his might. The bottle was sparkling and translucent, and the golden specks on its surface were glowing brilliantly with green vein patterns. It was as if there were numerous suns on the bottle and countless planets revolving around it. The golden and green colors intertwined, making the seed even more terrifying. Boom! Thousands of beams of light gushed out from the bottle's mouth, effectively intercepting the black scales. However, there were also a few that managed to penetrate the sword energy barrier and reach the target. Chu Feng tossed out the scarlet flying knife and slashed at the scales. However, his body was still splattered with blood as some of the scales pierced through. At this moment, both of them were injured. The battle was fairly bitter and bloody. Especially toward the end, Chu Feng frowned. The power of this seed was indeed great, but the consumption was also great. If this went on, he would definitely be exhausted. He retracted his hand and retreated several hundred meters away, avoiding the last dozens of black scales. He wiped off the blood on his face. In the distance, Haitung's injuries were even more severe than his. There were at least 20 bloody holes on his body, and his entire body was drenched in flood serpent blood. Chu Feng didn't want to waste any more energy, and Haitung didn't want to destroy his scales either. They couldn't afford it. Black Longworm, is it necessary to continue? Chu Feng asked, trying his best to provoke it. Right now, he really did not fear this flood serpent, but he also knew that if he really continued to fight, he would have to pay a heavy price. Kill you, Haitung said coldly. He simply couldn't swallow this anger. No matter what, he was an expert with 6 severed shackles. Today was simply too stifling. If news of this battle spread back to the South Sea, he couldn't afford to lose face. Roar! Haitong roared. His entire body shone as all of his wounds closed. He raised his hands and formed a strange fist imprint before shooting over like lightning. At this time, although Haitong was in human form, anyone who saw him would feel that he was a flood dragon in human form. His movements were extremely similar, and his fist imprints almost tore through the void. At the same time, his legs were also swinging like a flood dragon's tail as he lashed out at Chu Feng. You think I'm afraid of you? Then let's fight to the end. Chu Feng let out a low roar and raised his head. His eyes were like 2 small suns, and his entire body was suffused with astonishing energy. He circulated all of his essence energy and unleashed his fist imprints to engage in close combat with Haitong. Bang! An astonishing collision ensued. Light blossomed between the two, destroying the nearby forests and sending many millstone-sized rocks flying. A great explosion ensued. A draconic roar rang out from Hei Tung's mouth as if a true dragon had appeared. His fist intent became even more terrifying as the phantom of a flood dragon appeared behind him. Moo! The savage ox's roar shook the heavens. After Chu Feng used his demon ox fist, a black savage ox appeared in front of him, tearing apart the starry skies and erupting with an incomparable desolate aura. Both of them used their strongest power to fight fiercely. One could see the savage ox treading through the starry skies to fight against the flood dragon phantom. At this time, Chu Feng's eyes were incomparably sharp. His fists were like ox horns with terrifying sharpness. A casual punch from him could shatter a mountain. Dong! Hei Tung was startled and furious. Blood was trickling down from his fingers. He had been injured in the collision with Chu Feng's fist imprints. Roar! Toward the end, Chu Feng combined the demon ox fist with the demon flood dragon fist, increasing his power and speed by a large margin. Bang! At this moment, he was in a dangerous position as he fought Hei Tung in close combat. His fists landed on Hei Tung's body several times, sending him flying and coughing up large mouthfuls of blood. During this process, Hei Tung's legs were like the tail of a flood dragon, whipping Chu Feng several times. Blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth, but it was far inferior to the damage inflicted by Chu Feng. Especially as he fought continuously, Chu Feng's legs had also stretched out. The divine feet had fused with the demon flood dragon fist, and his legs swept out like a true dragon sweeping through an army of 1,000. Bang! Hei Tung was sent flying by Chu Feng's kick and crashed into the opposite mountain wall, causing it to explode. The two of them fought with bloodshot eyes. Disregarding everything else, they once again charged toward each other, leaping onto the mountain peak and engaging in a bloody battle. During this process, they constantly shifted and leaped from mountain to mountain, causing some of the peaks to crumble. Boom! Lightning runes erupted from Chu Feng's left palm. He had activated the demon's subduing art and struck Hei Tung's body. His hair stood on end as he was sent flying. Chu Feng's fists glowed resplendently. The divine feat granted him extreme speed as he chased after the Black Dragon Crown Prince, sending him flying with his chest caved in. At this moment, Chu Feng had gone berserk. His eyes were standing on end as he wanted nothing more than to kill the Black Dragon Crown Prince immediately. He felt a sense of urgency. After all, this was an expert with 6 severed shackles. It was hard to say if he had any special tricks up his sleeves. He wanted to kill him as soon as possible. Roar! Hei Tung was furious. He spat out a large amount of essence blood which transformed into a scarlet flood dragon and flew toward Chu Feng. Bang! Chu Feng was sent flying with heavy injuries. However, the flood dragon blood also exploded into a scarlet mist and was completely incinerated. The two clashed fiercely once again. The mountain peaks beneath their feet crumbled, a testament to their tyrannical strength. Following that, they leapt up and destroyed 4 mountain peaks in succession. Hei Tung felt increasingly sullen. He couldn't use his divine abilities, and his physical body was in a terrible state. The wound on his abdomen was too serious. If this continued, he would break into 2 pieces. Meanwhile, Chu Feng was becoming more and more ferocious. The demon flood dragon fist and the demon ox fist were becoming increasingly proficient and powerful. He had gone berserk. This was especially true when white mist suffused his nostrils and mouth. Coupled with his special breathing technique, his strength rose explosively and completely suppressed Hei Tung, sending him flying. Kill! Chu Feng roared. His right fist struck Hei Tung's chest and broke several of his bones. At the same time, his left fist lit up. Not only was it a combination of the demon ox fist and the demon flood dragon fist, but it was also accompanied by lightning as it smashed towards Hei Tung's wound. The Black Dragon Crown Prince was filled with regret. He should have stopped just now. Now he was in big trouble. He roared and blocked the punch with both hands. His entire body staggered and coughed up large mouthfuls of blood. That was because the energy had rushed into his arms and jolted his internal organs. Crack! At this moment, one of his arms had been forcibly broken by Chu Feng. Heiteng's eyes were red. If this went on, not only would he be defeated, but he would also die. He let out a muffled roar that shook the mountains like a tsunami. He had no choice but to fight with all his might, regardless of the consequences. A terrifying aura filled the air as he released the aura of a peerless expert. The power of 6 severed shackles suffused the air as he roared and charged towards Chu Feng. At this time, Heiteng's body erupted with black light. His entire being was like a black sun, surging with black light. Thump! Chu Feng suffered a violent collision, and one of his arms was immediately broken. Ah! Heiteng was also howling in pain because his body was about to break apart. Fresh blood gushed out from his abdomen area, and the sound of bones breaking could be heard clearly. Heiteng had gone mad. His hands seemed to be grasping the black sun as black light erupted from them and continuously smashed toward Chu Feng. Although Chu Feng retreated rapidly to evade the flood serpent's true power, he still couldn't evade all of the attacks completely. He suffered several heavy blows. Each time, he would suffer fatal injuries. His ribs were broken, and a bloody hole had appeared in his chest. The wound on his neck was terrifying and almost torn apart. Ah! Heiteng let out a miserable cry. Everything below his abdomen had been completely broken. At this time, he could no longer maintain his human form and had once again transformed into a flood serpent hundreds of meters long. Additionally, the space between his brows had cracked open and was dripping with blood. All of his old injuries had ruptured and were now even more serious. Heiteng's body broke apart and transformed back into a serpent, which crushed towards Chu Feng. He had thrown caution to the wind and unleashed his most powerful attack. He wanted to kill Chu Feng before he could no longer hold on. "Go to hell," he roared. Boom! Without the slightest hesitation, Chu Feng unleashed the diamond chakram with all his might. It would be too useless if he couldn't hit such a large target. Puffed! Heiteng's body had already been broken into two. Now, he had suffered yet another heavy blow. It could be said that he had suffered more injuries on top of his previous ones. The diamond chakram pierced through his body, leaving behind a large bloody hole. The chakram spun as it flew out, shredding a fair amount of flesh and blood. Chu Feng sighed inwardly. His position just now wasn't right, and he couldn't hit the crown prince's head. Roar! Heiteng roared furiously. He swung his body with all his might and directly flattened a mountain peak. It was enraged to the extreme. Its injuries this time were too serious, but at this time, it actually restrained itself and didn't go crazy. Instead, it suddenly crouched down and opened its mouth to pick up the lower half of its body. It broke through the sound barrier and fled at top speed, bringing with it a violent gale. "Where do you think you're going?" Chu Feng chased after the black dragon crown prince. He brandished his flying sword and slashed out with all his might. With a puff, he cut open a terrifying wound on the black dragon crown prince's body and cut off a large chunk of flesh. During the chase, Chu Feng felt his body grow weak because his stamina was almost exhausted. Moreover, his injuries were too serious. He had suffered many fractures, and there was a terrifying bloody hole in his chest. He put away his sword and didn't give chase. He didn't want to die together with Heiteng. He shot a glance and found that some people were stealthily moving in the direction of his diamond chakram. "Let's see who dares move." Chu Feng rushed over with great speed. The scarlet flying knife hovered above his head and surged with killing intent. Those people immediately concealed themselves and hid in the woods. They were quite apprehensive of him and didn't dare to fight over him. He had almost killed the Black Dragon Crown Prince just now and had truly intimidated them. With a swoosh, Chu Feng used his spiritual energy to retrieve the diamond chakram from the mountain crack. He then plunged into the woods with the flood serpent meat in hand. He felt that his condition was extremely terrible and needed to find a place to recuperate. This was the most serious injury he had suffered since his debut. He had suffered many fractures and his chest had been pierced through. An ordinary person would have died long ago. This battle had shaken the world. Chu Feng's near-kill of the Black Dragon Crown Prince created a huge storm that left all parties in disbelief. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.